Welcome back, everybody. You're about to get some stuff that's, I would say it has potential to either be our magnum opus or our magnum oh no.
This is us venturing into deep, deep waters of things that we do not understand. Everyone's has at least heard the name Isaac Newton, Sir Isaac Newton, but I'm just trying to think of how to go about this because this is somebody, we kind of explored it with Da Vinci, that you can't really figure out how their brain works or how they come to certain conclusions or how they figured something out. But this is like Da Vinci to the nth degree. Like Da Vinci, I could make sense of. He saw shapes. He saw patterns. He saw, he learned how to paint. All that kind of stuff, even the mechanical stuff, eventually will make sense after, research and everything.
Because you can see it.
Yeah, it's tangible. He knew what the bodies looked like. He knew what, organs they had because he could dissect bodies. I don't get the concept of just using numbers and angles to figure out stuff that you can't even really see.
No. And there was a point in time during this research that I was driving down the road. I was listening to a podcast and I had my hand out the window. And as they were talking about gravity and all of the elements and forces and stuff like that, I realized that my hand was in the force and I pulled it back inside the vehicle. Like it freaked me out to think that it was something that you can't see, but it's that wind that's pushing against you. Yeah. It's all just invisible. They're just forces. Forces are invisible.
All right. Well, strap in, folks, because this one's going to get a little bit technical. There's going to be a lot of what the fuck are you guys talking about, Chris and Adam, moments where we're just trying to figure out this stuff together. And if at any point you're like, hey, I know how that works, drop it in the comment section because we would love to know.
If you can explain it to two people who are just mystified by this stuff, we're ready to hear about it.
Use pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're not a math person, if you're not a science person, you don't got to worry because we're not really that way either. Newton might be the smartest person that we've ever studied, hands down. He might be the smartest person that ever lived.
Yeah, but an extremely weird dude.
Yeah.
Which is where it's going to get into kind of the human element, and that's where it's going to be entertaining.
Yeah.
Wherever you guys are listening to your podcast, remember 5 stars or whatever the highest rating is. Keep the comments coming. Keep the love coming. We're going to keep doing this as long as you guys are listening to it.
Yeah, we also hit a grand on YouTube for followers, so thank you. Love to keep seeing that number grow, but if you're migrating away from listening on a podcast and listening on YouTube, or if you want to subscribe to both of us, YouTube and your podcast, that's great. Those numbers look awesome.
All right, man, let's get physical. See what I did there?
I like that.
Yeah, because it's physics.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to throw a little confusion at you pretty much right out of the gate, but we'll explain it, and this we have a pretty good grasp on. Isaac Newton, not Wayne Newton, not Fig Newton, not Huey P. Newton. A lot of Newtons. We're just talking about strictly Isaac here. Was born either January 25th, 1642, or December 25th, 1642, or January 4th, 1643. Now, he was actually born on the exact same day, but in England, they were still on the Julian calendar.
Why have we not run into this before? How many people have we done in the sphere of this time frame? We've never run into a situation where it's been very pointedly made clear. It's like he was born on this day or he was born on this day, but they're the same day. It's just the 10-day difference or whatever it was because of a different calendar.
Yeah. England being on the Julian calendar, he was born on Christmas Day. If he had been born in France on the exact same day, he would have been born January 4th, 1643, because France and pretty much most of mainland Europe were on the Gregorian calendar. So this is just the old holdout in England being like, no,
The weirdness starts early.
yeah, we're keeping to this Julian calendar. So he's either born on Christmas or born 4 days into the new year. He was born in a place called Woolsthorpe by Closterworth in Lincolnshire, England. His mother, Hannah Eiskopf, was the only parent that was alive to see him be born.
Yeah, 3 months before he was born, his father, also Isaac Newton. So Isaac Newton Jr. and Isaac Newton Sr. You'd never hear about the junior, but yeah, he kicks it 3 months beforehand.
And 3 months beforehand, 3 months before, Isaac's stillborn premature.
Yeah.
Isaac's a very, very small child. Hannah had made mention that he could fit inside of a quart cup.
Mm-hmm.
I can't quite tell you what a quart cup looks like, but I bet it's a pretty small baby.
Yeah.
His mom, they mend fences in his adult life, but at age 3, his mother, being a widow, decides that maybe there's not enough money coming in. Maybe something needs to happen. She kind of puts herself out on the town. She would end up marrying a gentleman named Reverend Barnabas Smith.
I love the name Barnabas. Not enough to name a child after, but maybe, next pet.
No, Barney had some money, though. As a reverend, not quite sure how he got it. I have my guesses.
I don't think this was also really uncommon because, just kind of basing it off the ages, if she's already having children, I think this is their first child. They're probably early 20s.
Barnabas was like 60.
I know, but what I'm saying is I think maybe she was probably closer to those early 20s, if not younger. She's, trying to deal with, she has a kid. The thing that is the kicker for me is that when she hooks up with Barnabas, she is just like, oh, hey, by the way, little Isaac, you're going to be staying with Mima and Papa for a while I go build essentially this new family.
Barney wants a clean slate.
Yeah, that's so fucking I know that that's probably more common back then, but that's so shitty that you got to be like, okay, I'm going to be gone for a little while I establish this new family. But then, eventually maybe I'll kind of bring you in as the wacky cousin, and then I'll eventually introduce you as my other son.
Yeah, but that's not what happened. Apparently, Barney's piece still worked because they ended up having 3 kids together. Mm-hmm. So Newton had 3 half-siblings. I believe it was 2 brothers and a sister, potentially. But he was left under the supervision of his grandma and grandpa on his mother's side. And this kind of starts to paint the picture of maybe an isolated child that tends to learn his social cues from older people that he can't really relate to.
Also learns how to be, I guess, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, proficient in isolation. He knows what to do with isolation.
Yeah.
He's not bored with it. He can sit in it and make it a benefit for him.
Well, and they're not in a bad spot either because Isaac had left his wife and little Isaac all of the land that they had. He was a yeoman's farmer. They had parts of the land that were rented out to other farmers that were paying a rent. He had sheep. They had some pigs, some horses. And back in those times, anything with 4 legs was kind of currency. Mm-hmm. So in a place called Woolsthorpe, to have sheep feels like it's probably you're not too bad off.
Also the things you don't have to kill to actually get the thing off of them.
Yeah. So in this situation, she didn't leave him in dire circumstances. But I think Mima and Papa maybe weren't the most loving people because when Papa kicked the bucket, he didn't leave anything to Isaac in his will, which tells me that there probably wasn't a lot of love and adoration in a situation where a guy who's decently well off, because Hannah's parents, I think, were doing pretty good, just didn't leave the grandson anything. So I can't quite tell if maybe that's where some of his eccentricities come from. There's been people that have posited that he's neurodivergent, that he was neurodivergent. He possibly had a form of autism. I'm not quite sold. I think that these early years of kind of the isolation and just learning to be alone kind of makes you wary of people a little bit because you don't know their interactions. Being abandoned by your mother at 3 kind of feels like it's going to affect that a little bit.
Yeah, and then
How
not
you feel
getting
love.
not getting what you need from your grandparents and everything. You kind of are being shown where your place is, and you're being shown an example for how people interact. So to you, this is normal. It's not like you're going down to, the schoolyard or anything like that at this point, being like, well, Timmy's dad is hugging him and everything like that. It's just like, okay, this is how I was raised, so this is how people behave.
Closest thing I got to a father told my mom that I was a deal breaker, so she left me at home.
I do have thoughts about burning them alive in a house, though.
Yeah, he, we'll talk about his teenage reflections.
Yeah.
Luckily, Barney died. Hannah would end up coming back to the home richer than before. Of course, this was a decent deal. She also moves the 3 kids back. I think this is kind of Isaac's first introduction to like living with other kids.
Until you told me he was 60, I was thinking it might have been a Black Widow situation where she offs the husband, because it's at that point, are you doing it for the insurance money? But
yeah.
He probably also died of natural causes.
Depending on when he kicked the bucket, to have 3 kids in that run, it wasn't a long run. So he was probably exerting himself quite a bit.
That's true.
Onto Hannah. At the urging of his uncle, I believe it was Uncle Willie, and a family friend named Henry Stokes, they wanted to see Isaac go to school. Because I think Isaac was probably a pretty well-spoken kid. I think he showed some signs of some good intelligence. He would end up moving to a place called Grantham to attend the King's School, which kind of worked out perfectly because Henry Stokes, the family friend, was also the principal, the headmaster of the King's School.
It's going to be kind of a running theme where his uncle seems to be the only one that kind of gives a shit, it seems like.
Or gets him.
Yeah.
He understands what
he sees what he's capable of, and he's like, I don't know how he was just like, oh, this guy's going to be special in this or anything, but he saw proficiency that was like, yeah, he shouldn't be farming.
Well, he didn't show up and light the world on fire when he got to school. He was kind of an average student. He ended up boarding with this host family. He may have had a little fling with their daughter. He got really interested in a lot of building almost miniature things. He had a really strong knack for building sundials, I guess. He was very good.
I'm trying to do a sundial in my hand.
Yeah.
But I guess you have to, the angles, and you have to be able to go ahead and angle it. Yeah.
They said the accuracy of his sundial compared to other sundials would be a matter of 10 minutes in a day.
Oh, damn.
So a little bit better, but also for the daughter of the host family, she had this big grand dollhouse that he would build furniture for, and kind of, he had a creativity to him, I think, that was surprising.
We're going to discuss him all throughout his life, but just going back to when he was in school, it makes sense knowing what he's going to go on to do, of being like, okay, yeah, it makes sense because at that point in school, they're teaching him Latin, they're teaching him ancient Greek, they're maybe touching on philosophy, but a lot of it being, at this point, Protestant in England? Or was it Catholic coming back?
I think the Reformation had already happened.
Okay. But at the same time, you're then learning a Catholic education, which is very much based on the theology of the Bible. And so, whereas his mind is more geared toward the sciences, while still somehow believing all of the biblical stuff, you got to be bored. It's like a kid that his mind is geared toward one thing, but you're asking him to do this in a social studies class or something like that.
Yeah.
They're going to have strengths and weaknesses. And I think just the stuff that they were having him do in school was probably boring as shit for him.
Well, yeah, he didn't really have a motivator. Along with that, he gets a little bit, it's mainly focused on everything that the ancient Greeks and Latins had learned, along with reading, writing, and kind of some early mathematics. Blows me away that we're talking about the 17th century and mathematics hasn't fully caught on yet. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it kind of makes sense because if you have a fairly large portion of the world that can't read or write, doing math probably isn't going to be the next frontier.
It's not something you use for communication. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be kind of, a second thought.
Yeah. 1659, his mom would end up requesting that he return home to become the farmer in his father's image. He returns home and just hates it. Even the workers that they had on the farm didn't like him around because he was just so absent-minded and just didn't care. They would catch him out in the field reading a book instead of watching the sheep. He would constantly go into town and forget why he went into town and just basically wander into a bookstore or something like that and then come back empty-handed. He didn't ever have what he needed. And so eventually Uncle William comes back and Stokes comes back and like, hey, you're wasting this kid. He's not exactly a star at school, but at the same time, he gets the coursework.
He's worse at
this.
farming than he was at school, so let's maybe lean him into what he's better at.
And the workers on the farm are like, yes, Uncle Willie's right. Get this kid out of here. So he ends up going back. He does I believe it was his last 2 years at the King's School. And this is kind of where things turn as far as his academics go, because he got his ass beat by a bully. And knowing that it was probably going to be a lot more of the same if he tried to defend himself and fight back, he said, I'm going to be smarter than this kid. If I can't be stronger than this kid, I'm going to be smarter than this kid. And he put his nose to the books. He ends up becoming out top of the class. He's so smart that he ends up getting I guess it wouldn't be a scholarship, but he gets accepted at Trinity College at Cambridge.
Yeah.
Kind of funny. The Trinity College part plays a little bit of a role on some of Newton's beliefs later on that feels a little ironic. 1661, he's admitted into Trinity College at Cambridge. He's admitted to something called a subsizer. Now, it's a caste system? No, not a caste system, a social hierarchy of finances?
I mean, kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
In a way. Real quick, before we talk about him going into Trinity, one thing that he started to find that kind of let him know where his niche was going to be and that it was an availability for him to study is there was a certain point when he was going to the King's School, I think it might have been the last 2 years, that he actually worked in an apothecary.
Oh, yeah.
And working in the apothecary, so an apothecary is basically where they study or perform alchemy. Alchemy is now what is known as chemistry. But at the point when it was alchemy, if you've ever heard the term alchemy, it's always in like a fantastical or fantasy setting. It's because it was the closest that humanity got to basically being like, this is a recognized form of magic. It was taking certain things and turning them into other things.
Basically taking base minerals and turning them into precious metals.
Yeah.
In search of something called the Philosopher's Stone, which I have a couple different Harry Potter references in here that I feel like have come directly from the episode that you did.
Probably.
Because apparently in the first book of Harry Potter, everywhere else besides America, it's called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah.
And then for some reason we got the Sorcerer's Stone because we couldn't think of a Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah, but then in the movie they turned it into the Sorcerer's Stone.
I thought during the movie they had two different reshoots. If you got the European release, they do Philosopher for every time it's Sorcerer.
God, on the set, that would suck.
I'm pretty
All right,
sure.
everybody, run it back.
Yeah,
We're going to do the Sorcerer.
For everybody outside the United States.
We have to do the fucking American version.
Let's change it. But this Philosopher's Stone wasn't a stone. It was basically a matter that was used to change these base minerals into gold and silver. And this is kind of an issue because you can't study alchemy publicly because it's considered heresy to be able to change something that God created into something else. And moreover, the more people out there creating gold out of lead,
I think it was more that.
Gold much cheaper.
I would think it was that one.
The supply and demand sort of changes if you can turn anything into gold.
But being in an apothecary and kind of being surrounded by this alchemy thing, he starts to kind of gain these concepts of things, additional things that are possible, not just the things he's been forced to study up to this point. Also, the owner has a bunch of different books on different disciplines. I think there were some mathematics books and everything. And so he's basically finding these things. He's reading these books and he's looking at them. He's like, this makes sense. But like, I think he's got it wrong right here. And so he's already starting to kind of realize where his strengths are going to be. And when he eventually goes to Cambridge, he's working as a subsizer, which, like you were saying, is kind of down the rungs on a caste system because he's there, not, with his family paying for it. He's having to pay for it himself.
There's like it's like a paying fellow basically where they pay all their tuition and everything like that. And then there's a sizer, which they sort of kind of gave a little bit but have to work it off. And then there's a subsizer that basically has to be the servant for the sizers and then the paying fellows.
He's walking around emptying the fucking or chamber pots or whatever they had at this time around campus.
Got to be chamber pots. But interestingly enough, coming out of his apothecary years and studying, he also just basically thought that he could cure anything that goes wrong with him himself. Like,
That was also part of the Philosopher's Stone, though, wasn't it? Is that it would be able to create some type of liquid or something that you could imbibe that would essentially grant you immortality.
yeah, the first time that he really ever calls for an actual doctor is basically when he's on his deathbed.
So do you think it is the thing where, here we go with rabbit hole time, Philosopher's Stone is if you found, because it's all alchemy, it's chemicals, things like that, they would put the mineral, the lead or whatever it was in the beaker or the jar.
Mortar and pestle probably to mix it.
Oh, I think that I saw like examples of where they would actually just take chunks of it and mix it in, and it would have that reaction with the material.
Okay.
But what I'm thinking is just from a practical standpoint, what did they think was going to be the result? Like they have the lead or whatever it is, pieces of it. They figure out the right concoction or right, combination of these chemicals. They pour it on top of it. It transmutes it to gold. But then does that okay, so this obviously transmuted this to gold. We just cool this and this is what we drink because it did the gold stuff. Is this the stuff that makes us immortal?
Yeah, I also forgot about the immortality part of it. Yeah, maybe drinking the Philosopher's Stone, drinking whatever turned the lead into gold is what will turn you immortal.
It's the fucking Greek legend, or I can't remember if it was Greek or Roman, but the hand of Midas.
Yeah,
being able
Midas
to touch something. Yeah.
Also, whenever he got sick, he made this concoction. It was like rose water, wormwood, one or two other things, and then turpentine, which I believe we talked about. If not, the Dust Bowl is out. I think we also talk about turpentine being used as a cough suppressant there as well.
Was it turpentine or was it kerosene?
Kerosene. I think you're right about the kerosene.
Yeah. Both. Not good to ingest.
Yeah. So this man lives to 84, spoiler alert, while he's regularly drinking small amounts of kerosene that are mixed with like port wine.
Turpentine in this one, kerosene in the Dust Bowl.
Yeah. It's incredible the kind of stuff that they just used to put into their bodies. And we're going to talk about a lot with Newton because he just seems to put some weird, he lives around weird shit.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is based upon his alchemic research.
So while he's at Cambridge, he's also introduced to celestial studies, astronomy, theories that Galileo had actually, proposed and everything.
Oh, Galileo, is this recent?
Galileo, the same year he died, is when Newton was born.
Yeah, I thought Galileo was back to Aristotle.
Yeah,
I had no idea that he was a 1600s guy.
Again, it's that crossover of these guys like coming back to back.
Yeah, I also didn't know that he was Galileo Galilei, which sounds
Galileo's first name.
Maybe that's where Queen
like Cher
picked up the whole thing. He kind of got lucky when he gets to Cambridge because they were on this system of professorships where it was almost like you had a tutor, and that tutor would come kind of give you the lessons or you would show up. You would also have to go sit in lecture halls and listen to people lecture, but you didn't really have to sit in these lecture halls and listen. A lot of these professors were just kind of speaking to the clouds when they would be doing their exhortations or whatever, but Aristotle's professor tutor didn't really show up. He didn't really care. And it gave Aristotle enough time being an autodidact to be able to study himself.
You're saying Aristotle now.
Oh, shit, because that's where I was going. Yeah, okay. So Aristotle. The reason that I bring him up was because this was kind of what Trinity College is based around, was these I think it's called Aristian studies. And he devoured it. Being on his own without a tutor kind of spoon feeding him this stuff, he's like, I don't need this guy. I'm going to dive into these books. I'm going to learn the subject matter. I'm going to figure it all out.
Which is so crazy because technically I understand that the stuff they're pulling is like philosophy and the scientific studies and all that. But they're looking at those studies as like a cornerstone in a Protestant, Catholic, whatever, monotheistic, educational system, I guess you would say. The Greeks were under the impression that there were so many other gods.
Tons.
So it's like, oh, hey, we're going to take this portion of it from these heathens that believed in all of these gods, but they made some good points, so we're going to have to use this stuff.
Had Christ been born during Aristotle's time and he had met the guy, he would have understood that he's the one true guy. Also, the three main professions that come out of Trinity College, you're either going to be a doctor, you're going to be a man of the cloth, or you're going to be
practice law.
Practice law, yes. Yeah. So you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, or you are a priest.
Which if you're thinking of it from that sense, of course these lecture halls, and it's going to come into play in Newton's life, but these lecture halls that are to do with physics or mathematics, things of like, that nature, a doctor's like, I don't need no fucking math. I just need to cut cadavers open and figure out where to put the leeches and all that shit. Man that's going into, the cloth, he's just got to study theology and do all that kind of stuff.
Well, and the answer to every one of his questions can just be God.
Yeah.
So not tough.
And then the guy that's practicing law is simply just studying the laws on previous cases and all that kind of stuff. So
learning how to argue. Debate is probably huge for guys that are going into law.
So while all these other people there that are kind of chasing these three professions, he's sitting there and he's studying, Galileo's theories on motion and gravity. He's studying Kepler's laws of planetary motion, Descartes' work in geometry. The fact that there was a study of planetary motion enough to where there is several published books and everything, even before this time, when we're going to talk about his work with astronomy and the celestial bodies, how was there even stuff before this of people like, people have always looked up to the stars in the heavens, but to have some basis of knowledge of what planets there are and how they're like, that is such a long time to compile that information, because it's not just them going outside and being like, I wonder what that close or bright star is. It's them studying all the stuff that happened in the past, finding out from lore and legends from all these other places, how many times did this red star show up? How often was that? And then you narrow that down and be like, well, if it's shown up at this point, then it's got to be close to us in a repeating incident, which means that it's obviously somewhere close to us. And all of a sudden you develop these theories about like planetary rotation.
Well, and that was his move towards Descartes and Galileo and Thomas Street, was he got Aristotle's work done. He understood what that was. Mm-hmm. These guys that were more recent modern philosophers, because I think Descartes was alive at the same time, for at least a little run-up, these guys were the ones that built on Aristotle. So after you learn the base, you can figure out what Aristotle's work was taken by these other guys and kind of pushed in that direction. He creates his notebook series named the Questiones Quaedam Philosophicae, or the Certain Philosophical Questions about Mechanical Philosophy.
It's also crazy that this stuff is all in Latin, but all of this is being spoken in English. Not this as far as the podcast goes, but like all this stuff during this time, they're just speaking English to each other. He's writing it in Latin and everything, but he's actually just having these lectures and conversations.
Do you think because France and England fought so much that French people understood English and English people understood French?
No, and I think that's just because like we always think in the sense of being close because you can get somewhere by plane or by driving there or by train or whatever it is in a relatively short amount of time, a reasonable amount of time. Those people that were there, unless you were going over there and fighting, which they did every, 10 years, those people are hearing the other soldiers or maybe other people speak French while they're there, but they're not picking it up. I don't think they're really worried about learning French. They're just like, we're fucking here to come. If anything, you need to start listening to what we're saying so you can start learning our language.
So probably when they were on the battlefield, there was a fair amount of just not understanding what the other side was saying.
Yeah, it was someone like not understanding, but it was just the same thing. Like, fuck you too.
Yeah, there's universal language. It just blows me away that they were just not understanding each other back then and being so close.
So Descartes' work on geometry was kind of life-changing for Newton. This kind of led him down this path of teaching himself everything that he could find about math in like the next year. And he goes whole hog on this. I think he found something that the language made more sense to him than looking at Latin. It was easy for him to look at something like geometry or mathematics and say, oh yeah, this is this way, these angles will determine this. And it also interested him as well.
He found Euclid.
Yeah.
He found the father of geometry and understood that it's a building block towards kind of different things that he was thinking about. He kind of gets he ends up getting his bachelor's, and then in 1665, everything is halted because we are back to Yersinia pestis, our old friend, plaguing London, and the spread of this thing, again, I want to say it was 1300s when we were talking about the Black Plague.
Yeah, and then it was just repeated at certain points throughout history. And every time, like learning about the figures for this, it's like, oh man, like it wasn't just mini plagues. Like some of these hit pretty hard because I want to say this one ended up killing like 15% of the population of London.
London, yeah, I think it was like 100,000 people that it ended up killing. And this is 200-ish years removed from the Black Plague. Like this, it's still happening in these numbers. And it's wild that they had to go through and shut down all of these colleges because of the spread of this.
And at that point too, are you just like, oh, it's plague season?
Yeah.
Like you know what it is now because it happens every so often. They're like, plague.
Everybody, let's just...
All the people run for the countryside. It's basically what it was.
And that's what Newton did. He took off from Trinity College. He would haul ass back to Woolsthorpe.
It closes down the college, right?
Yeah. And he gets back there, and he's kind of back in this natural environment. He's back in this childhood environment of being alone and kind of being away from everybody. And as he does this, he enters what's known as his glorious years, his 2 glorious years that he spends back in Woolsthorpe on the Newton estate.
It's that weird lining up of he has just recently found something that's his thing and what he's going to go whole hog in. And all of a sudden, I'm not saying the plague was a good thing, but for him, it actually turned out to be a good thing because all of a sudden now all that stuff that he had to do that he thought was extraneous stuff, like all my Latin studies and all this, that's not around anymore.
Yeah.
Not only is that not being required of him to do that work, to turn in papers, to get passing grades, all of a sudden he just has this isolation and he found his new favorite toy. It's like learning to masturbate for the first time. Except
for nobody else is around and you have all the time in the world.
Well, I mean, that's what you always hoped for.
Yeah. But that's... Yeah, he learned how to tug it, and then he looked around and was like, I got 2 years to hone this craft. So I'm going to be real good at this.
Like sometime between 65 and 66, and I know that those are 2 years, or 1 year combined, but it was a point where it was early in 65 and then later into 66. I think it was like 18 months that he was at home for this, that he had his, miracle years or whatever they called them.
Glorious years.
The glorious years. And...
Go ahead.
No, sorry, go.
His first kind of... I guess feather in his cap was, as you were talking about this study of geometry, he now had all this time to work towards what he was working on. And he discovers and develops something that is known as the generalized binomial theory. And once he figures that out, he begins to work on this mathematical theory that would later become calculus. The guy debatably invented calculus, and we'll talk about the debate, but he just invented a whole form of math that's used in architecture and so many things.
Yeah.
Just created it.
Mm-hmm. There wasn't something around that would allow him to do what he wanted to do, so he found a way to do it, which sounds so insane.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
You're just like, I can see it from a standpoint of being like, okay, hey, we're in the middle of this game. The rules aren't really working out. Let's change up the game a little bit and let's make these new rules. He had to invent something that would stand up to scrutiny and that would be a natural truth based upon the laws of science and physics and all that kind of stuff and mathematics. It wasn't just him saying like, I'm going to create my new language for me and my invisible friend. He was like, I have a new way of figuring all this shit out and try me on it because it's going to be right.
Yeah. And of course, once you figure that out, his next kind of goal is to look into optics. And his optics studies, he really put a lot of sweat equity in this. He punished himself quite a bit. He was studying the early 17th century works of a guy named Johannes Kepler on kind of the geometric optics. Geometric optics come from the study of Euclid, who was the father of geometry. So you have these worlds intermeshing, and I'm sure once he looks at Kepler's geometric optics and he sees geometry, he's like, oh, Euclid, I'm home free. I'm going to be able to blend these two things together. Geometry helped me land on the binomial theory. I can put this into optics. It's all going to make sense. It was like he had a springboard into optics based upon math.
That's what I don't get. What was the connection from geometry? I get there's geometric shapes and there's patterns and everything, but then it turns into optics. Is it him trying to figure out why we see certain things? we talked about this, throughout the week, what we kind of thought his angle was throughout his entire life, what his end goal was, because he switches to so many different things. He's fantastic at all of them. A true like how we were talking about Da Vinci being like the epitome of a polymath. I don't know. I might change it at this point.
Yeah.
Da Vinci seems like he had more range as far as different disciplines. This guy is just polymath, mathematics, physics, astronomy, alchemy, theology, and he's also an author because he drafted several books. But he has this idea, in my opinion, that, and it's going to be kind of based upon what we talk about when he kind of rubs the religious kind of structure a little bit wrong. I think he believes in God.
Yeah,
he doesn't believe
for
in
sure.
certain aspects, but because of his upbringing and just the times and everything like that, he definitely believes in God. His thought on God's role, I guess, is a little bit different. I think he viewed God as the lead scientist, the scientist that knew everything, that knew so much that he could design the earth and design these things that live on the earth and design these planets that are orbiting in the sky. And to Newton, because he viewed God as a scientist and viewed that science works within a set of rules and structures, whether they be calculus, geometry, all that kind of stuff, he is looking into all these different disciplines, trying to essentially figure out the problem and find the way that God did it. He's like, if I can crack this and figure out what equation God was using to make this, like that's going to be the ultimate understanding of religion and everything like that in the universe. And I think he gets into these modes where he's studying mathematics. It's not working for him. He invents calculus, and then maybe he hits a roadblock and he's like, okay, this isn't getting me as far, or this isn't progressing me. I've got writer's block with calculus. And then all of a sudden he looks over and he's like, I bet optics kind of blends into this. So I'm going to go ahead and study this to see if this will allow me to crack this code and I can figure out why our eyes see a certain way.
Yeah, there's so many ways in that he could have found this kind of stuff. And I certainly think he was, I didn't really hear the term, but he feels like a biblical absolutist. Like what the Bible says came directly from the people that corresponded with Jesus and God. Mm-hmm. So whatever they say in the Bible is what it is. These guys that are out here trying to interpret it and tell me what they're trying to say in the Bible, I can just understand those guys. I don't need this kind of interpretation from these guys because they're going to bastardize it a little bit.
I formed my own opinion already when I read this thing. Mm-hmm. It's already locked up here. I know what it is.
There's nothing that you guys have over me mentally that's going to tell me something different.
And maybe that's what he thought when it came time, when it came down to people either performing miracles or these things, miraculous things happening. He's like, no, that's just part of the equation. Mm-hmm. Like there's certain points in this equation where things are going to be a little bit wonky, or all of a sudden you're going to find out the answer to something all of a sudden. I think that's where those miracles come from, is everything is built within a system. I just have to know how to read the system.
Yeah, I want God's explanation of this, and I can figure out God's explanation for these things.
I want him to check my notes. It's like in Good Will Hunting when he sees on the board, and it's Newton going up there and being like, okay, well, this is God's equation, so I'm just going to try to solve it.
And then he nails it. Upon Kepler's research that he's studying, he goes with Descartes, who had this further study of reflection and refraction. He discovers this law of refraction. He starts to kind of blend those two things in together. As Newton took that work from Descartes further, he expands it into something called the corpuscular theory of light. It states that light is made up of small particles that travel in a straight line. Now, this diverges from more of a wave-like thinking that Descartes had and that other people had, i.e. Robert Hooke. He's going to get introduced here, and he's the villain that we all want.
Mm-hmm. But is he? Who's the villain here?
Fair enough. Yeah, you're probably right. One of the things that he would do to kind of build this theory of light is he would pass light through a prism. And once he passed the light through the prism, it would refract the light, reflected and refracted are really going to mess with me. It would refract the light into the colors of the rainbow. There was this belief that white was purity. That
the light that came down from the heavens was a pure white light, which is when it came through a window or it came through a piece of glass. It didn't change the color of it. this section right here, I probably spent too much time looking into it. It's one of those things that as soon as you figure out the explanation to it, you're like, oh shit. So light itself includes all of the colors. It's Roy G. Biv, right?
Yep, the visual light spectrum.
The visual light spectrum. So Roy G. Biv. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet.
Mm-hmm.
He discovered that light contains all of those colors already. The way we perceive it, however, is just as that natural light, which is crazy because we just see through it. It's like the invisible spectrum that we're just kind of looking through. So he would shine this light. He would, darken his room. He would like have a little hole cut out like in one of the shades. And he would basically shine just a cylinder of light or a beam of light into this prism. And one side would reflect white light, right? Where it shot out one direction, and another direction would separate and have all of the colors. This explains what happens when you see a rainbow. The sun is shining through the rain, and it's refracting, and you're getting all of the colors. It's just simply the refraction out of the rain because the light already fucking contains all those colors. We just can't see it. And so he's trying to test this to see if this is actually true. So he takes the side that has the colors and he kind of puts like an obstruction where the light is shining, and it has a little bit of a slit in it. So what he does then is he takes the color and he'll do individual colors. Like he'll put the red color in the slit. He'll put another prism behind it, and then that prism reflects the red. So he's like, I know this is red light because if something was going on with the prism, it would change the light as well.
Not to throw another monkey wrench into this, what's better than one prism? Two prisms.
Isn't that what he did? He had the prism behind the slit?
He set the second prism up. The color spectrum that hit the second prism would then be turned back into natural light, into white light. Because that color spectrum would then refract into the second prism, bringing it back all together.
But if it was just a singular color, it would stay that color because what makes the white light is the combination of all the colors.
Mm-hmm. It's insane that he figured out how to separate light and then recombine light. Also, I believe Roy G. Biv is 7 colors, and he added like indigo and violet being right next to each other. He kind of expanded to hit 7, the celestial number of 7.
Which you can probably get just out of those shades of the darker blue, but they really don't probably need to be there because you could get like, oh, it's orange red, or it's like a chartreuse or some shit.
At this point in time, the color spectrum could be a million different colors because it's just the gradients within the colors.
But now this shows that there are certain things, it's already the light that exists that makes you perceive things in certain colors. So we don't really know what fucking colors things actually are. Mm-hmm. It's just perceived by this spectrum that we're looking through. He also, as part of kind of this prism study, I'm trying to think of what the other part of it he did was. I lost my track.
I don't know what else he did with prism. I do know that once he figured out the light being composed of all colors, his next experiment was more about the eye and how it perceives some of these things, because what he did, and this is going to get a little gross here, folks.
This is what I was going after. I couldn't remember this, and I don't know now how I couldn't remember this.
Kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies. What he would do is he would take a blunt needle. I'm not sure why in the world you'd have a blunt needle. It was something for sewing. He closed his eyes, and he took the needle and pressured between his eyeball and his eye socket.
I think it was blunt, so then he couldn't penetrate the eyeball. It would simply slide along it. And when they say needle, it sounds like it was a small rod that he did that. But he's sliding it behind, up under his eyelid, and to the back of
his eye was closed when he did it.
I thought he went up and behind it, and then it came. I don't know. He shoved a fucking rod in his eye and then was pressing on the back of his eye to see if it would affect how his eye was perceiving stuff.
And it did. It did, because...
Of course it does. You're poking at the back of your eye.
Well, the very interesting thing about it was the pressure that he had created on his eyeball, it would cause him to see these colored circles. But the interesting thing about the colored circles was where he was poking in his eye, directly opposite his vision is where the actual circle of color would show up. Mm-hmm. So we figured out that we see things upside down because the way that our eye works, it's convex.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
everything that we're looking is basically it's all upside down, but our eyes revert it to make it the way that it is. So as he's pressing on the opposite side of his eye and he's seeing the pressure point on the other side of his eye.
Okay. We view things. If you were to just simply take the signal from our eye and go straight to video, that would be upside down.
It's called retinal inversion processing.
But your brain knows that's happening, and your brain reverts it back the other direction.
Yep.
So it's like it's decoding it.
Pretty much.
Okay.
So yeah, he ends up figuring out this retinal inversion processing to where he understands that these pressures that he's feeling in his eyes are hitting the opposite points of his vision. Just absolutely incredible that this dude's putting this kind of stuff together. This is where he gets even dumber. He also used a mirror to stare into the sun with one eye, hoping to create an after image of the colors. You know how when you stare at a light for too long and you close your eyes and you see the multiple colors?
Yep.
He did that with the sun. I don't know why he couldn't have done it with a candle.
Not bright enough, baby. I'm using God's light.
Yeah, he decided that the sun is going to work. And in doing so, he basically fucked up both of his eyes for months. He had to spend just days in a lightless room to try to get his eyes back.
I want to say for an extended period of time, I can't remember if he did it with one eye or both eyes, but for a pretty extended period of time, he could only see in red and blue, right?
Yep. Yeah.
3D, man.
But every time he closed his eyes for these months, he had those image of colors from the sun that were just burned into his eye. It was like being in the 90s and leaving your Super Nintendo on and the TV on, and then you shut the TV off. Yeah, it's right in there. And that's what he was getting. Covered math, covered calculus, covered optics, still in the glorious years.
Yeah, I don't know how that had to have been kind of the apex of optics experimentation. He's like, where do I go from sticking a needle in the back of my eye and staring at the sun for a while? He's like, I think I've hit my writer's block on this. What's the next discipline I'm going at?
Yeah, it turns out my experiments are progressively being worse for my body. So maybe I do something. Maybe I go sit out in a field and just sit there and stare at the trees. This is where we run on to probably the most famous story in science.
Yeah. So the story is that he's sitting underneath an apple tree and the apple falls out of the tree. It hits him in the head. All of a sudden he's like, why did this apple fall out of this tree and hit me in the head? What's actually causing anything to fall down? And much like we do during this podcast, sometimes this apple causes him to rabbit hole and he's trying to figure out about gravity and what is actually exerting a force. And this leads him to eventually develop Newton's laws of motion.
Well, this is a very much a running theme of Newton's life. This story doesn't come out until he's like 82 years old. And when the story comes out, it comes out to 4 people. Is it true? Is it not true? Don't care. Did he get hit in the head with the apple? Did it fall? Don't care.
I think he was just sitting there reading a book. The apple fell out of the tree and he was just like, oh, and it was like a light bulb. He's like, the apple hit me in the head and it caused this.
Even if he's a liar, turns out he's an awesome liar too, because it's a great story to kind of look at it and use it as almost like him seeing it is an example that you can use directly with how gravity works.
The apple tree is still alive.
Is it?
Yes.
Really?
You can purchase graphs from the apple tree. It is, I think it's, so this would be 300. It's 350 years that they can determine this thing is. A piece of it was actually taken by NASA and sent up on the space shuttle Atlantis.
Hell yeah. That's pretty cool. Makes a lot of sense.
You can buy a graft and have Isaac Newton's apple tree if you can graft it right, growing in your yard. You could have him grow the same fucking apples that will fall.
I got a lot of beef with apple growers, and maybe it's just because I didn't look into this, but I've never heard of it before. You have these people that are developing these designer fruits, right? It's where we get sugar bees and different things like that, where they're just making apples.
That's why there's 18 different types of apples.
And then name them. Yeah, the newest one that just came out, I love them. Galaxy apple, it'll come to me as soon as we're done recording.
Some version of Cosmic Crisp or something like that.
Cosmic Crisp, that's what it is. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
If you create a new apple and you have to come to naming it, Newton's apple feels like the best brand marketing.
Isaac's.
Isaac's apples, yes.
Yeah.
How is that not an Isaac apple? How have we not come up with that yet? It blows me away that we've missed out on this opportunity to have Isaac's apples.
If we get to a position where we have our own large studio that we're talking about, I want a skylight in the very middle. We're growing a goddamn Isaac Newton apple tree right there.
I love that idea. I think Washington State paid about $180 million to create the Cosmic Crisp. So we're going to have to do this on a little smaller, or to develop the Cosmic Crisp.
I just want the tree.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, just the Newton tree. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about
Can you
designing
imagine
your own
that
apple.
flex? Having someone come around and be like, Isaac Newton's tree.
Yeah. Newton's cradles. I mean, this is where the shit comes from. This is where you get the whole idea behind it. And as he's looking at this apple tree, he sees this apple fall. He starts to ponder the laws of gravity that Chris was just talking about. Descartes put forth the ideas of matter and action being independent of theology. Interesting that it has to be independent of theology, as in God doesn't control this gravity. But then Newton's like, well, he might not control it, but I can explain how he created it.
So this leads to pretty much almost a montage of just like simplified experiments where he's taking different objects and literally just dropping them.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, regardless of the size of these objects, it looks like they're actually dropping at the same time. He probably does the old thing where he's like, oh, it's a piece of parchment or it's a feather, and he drops that. He figures out, he's like, well, of course this isn't dropping. It's got the resistances and all that kind of stuff. Or maybe that's how he does figure out this stuff.
Well, he uses what Descartes came up with. Descartes used what Galileo came up with. He wrote about these experimental movements of falling and rolling objects, and their conclusions were the object just stopped rolling because it ran out of whatever it cared to do. It wasn't that there was a gravitational force that was slowing down the mass.
Okay, how far are we from talking about the laws?
I don't think I get to the laws until the Presinia.
Okay, that's fine. We can wait on it.
Newton would use all of these different things to form these opinions that Kepler's law must also apply to the orbit of the moon around the Earth. Like, he went from micro of what Descartes is doing, built upon what Galileo was doing, just rolling shit across the floor, dropping it, to looking up at the stars and be like, well, the moon just kind of stays in that spot.
Well, differently than you're seeing it, but at the same time, yes, he understands that the moon is somehow a constant. So something has to require it. You know, some force is required to go ahead and keep that in its current position. Most of this stuff, and it sounds kind of like dumb to have to mention this, but he uses the scientific method. And I was like, what is the scientific method?
It's
Basically,
the easiest thing in the world.
you have an idea,
Yep.
and you literally just use testing of science and logic to come to your conclusion. That's what it is.
It's a theory and it's an experiment.
Yep.
That's
Scientific method.
Scientific method. How that had to be named, I have no idea.
What other methods are being used, man?
Yeah. Yeah. You're just experimenting to maybe create a theory. I don't know how that goes.
Or you just do hypothesis and then you're just like, okay, it'll work.
Yeah. But he kind of comes to this idea that the orbit of the moon around the Earth and all of the objects on Earth are caused because of gravitational force. It's created because all of the mass of the Earth was so concentrated at its center that would be where the pole would come from.
He's also differentiating between weight and mass. So weight is essentially what an object, the amount of gravity that is being exerted on an object. That's what determines our weight. Our weight on the moon is different than it is on Earth. Mass is a constant. It's essentially the stuff that makes up something. It's the amount of stuff that makes up something. So on the moon, a basketball has the same mass as it would be on Earth, or a solid ball or a bowling ball or whatever would be. Its weight would be different. If you went to go pick up a bowling ball on the moon, a 10-pound bowling ball, it's going to have whatever percentage the Earth's gravity, and it's going to weigh that much less. But it's still the same size. So he starts to also put together these theories when he's talking about his laws of motion and everything, that there is a difference of how gravity is affecting things. It affects things differently toward the moon than it does on Earth. And then he also starts to figure out that fucking tides are impacted by this stuff. Is that just going back and being like... Am I overcomplicating this?
No.
Because I feel like you could come to a conclusion And it just be simply this. He has an idea and he's like, "What? I wonder what the moon impacts." And he goes and he's studying and he's like, "I wonder if it could impact, why are the tides higher and everything like that?" He cross-references and he's just like, "Oh, well, I found that they reported the moon was in these phases when the tides were higher. So if so facto, the moon has to affect the tides." Or is it him offering a scientific explanation? Because that's not a scientific method. That's just me assuming something.
Well, and you also have to be in a spot where, I don't know. I mean, they're on England. They're on the island of Great Britain. So they're surrounded by water. I don't know how close the ocean is or anything around him, but you have to be familiar enough with tidal charts to be able to then cross-reference tidal charts to moon positions, different things like that. So I don't know where that introduction comes from.
It has to start with interest in the moon and then trying to find out what the moon does. And again, I think that's just him looking at something and saying, like, if this is a thing that exists in nature, and when we're talking about natural sciences, I feel like, because that's how they refer to what he was actually studying, was the natural sciences. It's not like the sciences of like trees and grass and like nature as you see it. It's the laws that exist in nature itself and how those kind of come together and work together or work against each other. So for him, trying to solve this fucking God's math problem on the board, I think if he sees that the moon is impacting the tides, he's like, this is part of the equation. It wouldn't do this if this wasn't part of the equation. It would be unnecessary.
Why does he care about tides?
Because it's part of the equation, man.
But how do you know?
He gets fucking tunnel vision, and as soon as he figures out there's something gravitationally important about the moon, he's just like, now I need to know everything about the moon.
I just feel like if you're not dealing with the tide
That's
on
why
a
I don't
daily
get how his
basis-
mind works.
Yeah.
It's an obsessive thing.
Yeah, we're kind of in the mind of a madman, except for he's just brilliant. Like it's, for the most part, it's geared towards not killing people.
He's not charismatic.
So, yeah.
That's the difference. He's not a charismatic madman.
Yeah, and to go back to the not geared towards killing people, we forgot when he was 19 years old, he began a list of writing down basically his sins, the things that he was sorry for. And tops of that list was sorry for telling his mom and Barney that he wanted to burn them alive in the house that he was going to burn. He wanted to burn them inside of the house that he was then going to light on fire.
Honestly, man, if your mom leaves you alone up until the point where you're 8 and she leaves you with your grandparents, yeah, you're going to probably have some negative feelings.
Yeah.
Who hasn't thought of setting fire to the house, right?
It feels like a lot. But again, it's kind of him. And that's the most interesting thing about him is we're going to talk about him going into theology. The way that he attacks theology is the exact same way that he attacks these things. The exact same way that he attacked his list of sins is the exact same way that he attacked calculus. He started at a point and just worked his way through studying it. He has his bachelor's. He ends up returning back to Trinity in April of 1667, and he begins his work towards being a fellow. Becoming a fellow becomes a bit of a problem because in order to become a fellow, you are tested on the course material that you are given. Now, he is so far removed from the course material because he just spent these glorious years working on calculus, working on optics, working on gravity, that, oh, by the way, he just sets up on the shelf. Doesn't say a word.
Yep.
Doesn't speak a breath to anybody.
It's not complete yet.
Yeah.
He's still looking to see what other parts of this problem are, and then maybe that will. I think he's a guy that the job is never done, and so I think when he shelves this stuff, he's like, I hit my stopping point at this, but once I do this other stuff, I bet it actually explains a few things over here, and I can always come back to it. But I do believe I will have to come back to this because this still doesn't make as much sense to me as it should.
And I think that he's a guy that was just so calculated that as soon as he answered every question that he had, he's like, okay, I'm good. I don't care to let anybody else know. I did my own service to myself. Who cares what anybody else thinks?
Maybe it was also boredom too.
Yeah.
Once he's making notes on stuff, he's writing his observations. I would imagine that the way he's taking all of this down is in a way that's more easily digestible for him to understand. Probably shorthand of a lot of stuff. And for him to have to get to the point where he felt confident that he could write something down, he probably just looked and he's like, I'm tired of this. I don't want to spend the next few months trying to put this into like a journal or trying to turn this into a book. I'm excited because the last bit of research I did led me to this thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to fucking sit here and wait around. I want to get onto this next thing. So I'm just going to put this shit away.
I reached my conclusion. Why would I try to change it for anybody else?
I've got my conclusion.
Yep.
I don't give a shit if anybody else sees my conclusion. I still am figuring this thing. I'm still trying to solve this. Once I solve it, then I'll tell everybody how.
A lot of times it sounds like he prescribed himself to the Charlie Kelly method, because he drew a lot of symbols for stuff. Like, it wasn't all in words. Some of it was encrypted. Some of his alchemy work had to be encrypted, obviously, because if anybody ran across it and found out that he was committing black magic.
Is this a bird with teeth?
Denim chicken?
Denim chicken, yeah.
Professor Wormhat's worm hat? A lot of that, I think, was going on. So yeah, he comes back for this fellowship test, and he runs into an issue because this Aristean thought, all of this stuff from Aristotle is what's going to be on the test. He hasn't thought about Aristotle in years. Not even come close
so far
to caring.
past it.
Yeah. Somehow he ends up passing this test to become a fellow. That also becomes an issue. In October, he's passed. He was elected a fellow. And once you become a fellow, you are basically a professor. To become a professor, you have to become a man of the cloth. So you have to take these things called holy orders. So basically, you have to swear off getting married up into this point.
Celibacy, I think, was it.
Or was it celibacy? Marriage, celibacy, probably. All that goes hand in hand. And he's kind of got some issues because he has to take these holy orders. Holy orders mention the Trinity.
Yeah, it's not the celibacy that he's got a
No,
problem
no.
with. He's like, honestly, if I'm horny for science, and that's about all that gets me excited these days. A woman would just be a distraction. She's not going to help me solve this problem.
Had a wet dream about a rainbow the other night. I'm satisfied. Don't need a woman in my life.
Yeah, it's the other thing of him basically having to subscribe to the exact version of the religious hierarchy that they have, the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Ghost.
Holy Ghost.
And the Holy Ghost. He thinks that Jesus, he does believe in the Bible of this role that Jesus had, but he doesn't put him on the same level as God. To him, it's just like God, Jesus served his purpose. That's what he sent him down here for. I don't even know what he thinks about the Holy Ghost, but he doesn't believe in this triumvirate.
It might be Holy Spirit. I think Holy Ghost might be a Mormon thing, but Holy Spirit, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, it's what they do the Catholic cross with.
Their son, the Holy Ghost.
Yeah. Oh, maybe.
The mother and brother and both of their sons.
But yeah, he's got a real big problem with this. He almost feels like it's idolatrous to try to hoist Jesus up to this level of God. He believes that they're made of the same matter. He doesn't believe that they're on the same plane. And in doing so, he ends up deferring this time period that all fellows are required to become an Anglican priest to the max of 7 years. He's pushed it out as far as he possibly can, saying that if this day comes and I'm not ready to take the holy orders within 7 years, I will walk away from the church.
What do you think that conversation was like? So they come, he's coming in the room, he's sitting in front of all the guys, and they're like, "Are you ready to do this?" And he's like, "Okay, tell me what the requirements are again." It's like, can't have sex, and you need to believe in the Holy Trinity. And he's like, "I'm wanting to have a lot of sex, so I'm going to need 7 years of sex to get this all out of my system. I'll let you guys know after all the sex."
Yeah, because at that point in time, it's either choosing between admitting that you're a sex addict or admitting that you're a heretic.
And it's much better to be a sex addict. I mean, everyone's a sex addict.
Yep. They can't kill you for being a sex... Well, they might be able to kill you for some sex acts. But if you're a heretic, your punishment's just death.
Yeah. You can still teach as a sex addict, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, well, the church has gotten away with that for a really long time recently, so it makes sense. Earlier in his career, he had befriended... Don't know what this word means. I'm going to get out in front of it now. The Lucasian professor of mathematics. His name was Isaac Barrow. Isaac Barrow was actually the first Lucasian professor of mathematics. Earlier in his career, they kind of run into this shared interest in the study of mathematics.
Lucasian generally refers to something connected with the Lucasian chair of mathematics at the College of University of Cambridge. So maybe it's just a title.
Lucasian?
Yeah, I guess.
Like the head of the department?
Yeah.
It's a cool ass word. I like saying Lucasian. I just no idea what it means.
Oh, of or pertaining to Henry Lucas, Member of Parliament for Cambridge University, founder of the Lucasian chair.
Oh,
So
because
it's
he
named
created
after
the
a
mathematics
dude.
wing. That's right. Okay, cool. Good for him.
Lucas.
Yeah, I like that. And this is kind of where Newton becomes a little bit more math heavy. And I'm sure he's sharing with Barrow now this calculus study that he's been
Did we
working
mention
on.
Barrow before? I don't think
No.
we've mentioned Barrow yet. So he, all of a sudden, he gets this role. Then now he doesn't have to worry. Just like when he got to go study for that 18 months.
Yeah.
Now he gets to make money because I think they said that like the professors, their requirements were to give one lecture a week. They had to do some tutoring, but it wasn't really involved for them to have to do this. And half the time during his lectures, he said that there was barely anybody in there.
If anybody at all. And this mathematics that he's starting to teach about, because he's teaching, I believe it was geometry. He wasn't on a calculus yet. He wasn't going to let that cat out of the bag. But he was teaching algebra and geometry. Again, if you're a doctor, the fuck cares? If you're a lawyer, you're probably just going to, the only way that you're going to learn anything in that class is arguing with him about numbers. That's going to help you in the future.
You accidentally pick it as one of your electives. Yeah. I think you're in here by mistake, young man.
If you're a man of the cloth, numbers don't mean anything to you. God did it all.
Yeah.
So again, why would you need that? So nobody's showing up to these lectures, and part of the requirement is for every one of these lectures that is given, you have to put your notes into the record for Trinity College is like what you taught, so you can go. People can go back and study your lecture. Basically, he just didn't turn them in. He didn't turn them in for like 20 years, and then eventually would go back and have, because he, for a while, he didn't have like a secretary to write them down. So eventually when he got a secretary, he just started talking, and the secretary started writing. He's like, yeah, just throw those in. Those will go in the vault. That's what people need.
This guy's got ADD with like extreme like hyper focus on certain things.
But again, that just shows you how little they cared about math. Was nobody was going up and being like, hey, why is it your stuff in the vault? Why can't I find it?
So he's getting paid now because, surprise, surprise, these experiments that he's doing aren't paying the bills. He's not earning money from them. Of course he's not. He's not even publishing to sell any of this kind of stuff. So ends up becoming this professor, has access now to resources pertaining to mathematics. He basically is in a position where he doesn't have to worry about learning anything that they forced him to learn before. He's not a law professor. He doesn't have to know any of that shit. He's like, I can just focus and continue my studies while kind of getting paid for it.
Yeah. At the same time with these lectures, just like he was given tutorship over 3 students. There were 3 people that had Isaac Newton as their personal tutor teacher. None of them amounted to anything. You had potentially the smartest human being on the planet.
I think that says more about him than about them. You
Really?
got to make someone interested in something. And also, if you're so much smarter than those, which he probably was, how frustrated do you think he would get that, like, I'm having to try to do this stuff when I really want to be doing this? He probably wasn't the best tutor. He had a tutor that we just talked about, Isaac Barrow. He was another professor of mathematics, I believe. This guy was kind of
The first.
Yes, this guy was the guy that kind of took him under his wing when he first went to Trinity, I believe. And he was that teacher that was his favorite teacher. He used it, he studied under him as a mentor, but he didn't really pass that along. I don't think he was ever like, I'm not going to just slow down for these people. Like, if I'm going to be developing stuff, I'm either going to keep up or you're not. I'm not going to change the way I'm doing stuff.
Yeah, but how do you not look at that guy and listen to him once and be like, I like what this guy's saying?
What if he's saying batshit crazy stuff that he knows to be true, but at the same time, he's talking about calculus. Nobody knows what the hell is calculus, and he's putting all these numbers up on the board, and you're like, I don't understand this. He's like, you're stupid for not understanding this. I just think at this point, like you said, the main focus of this school was law, medicine, or going into the cloth. The people that were coming in here for math probably weren't really that excited about it. And after hearing him talk, probably lost even more interest.
Yeah. Feels like a wasted opportunity, but you're right. The teacher kind of provided
You
the
have
wasted.
to make someone interested in the topic and then give it to them in a way that they can understand.
Well, and I wonder if when he's teaching this, like how his interplay is with God. Like, how is he bringing God into these lessons?
Yeah. I didn't even think about that.
Because we're still in a religious school, And that's still his main focus, is that God made this stuff happen.
He's like, technically that 7-year period. Oh, I have to talk about God during that? I thought that was for the whole thing.
Yeah, he kept his feelings on the Trinity very, very quiet. He told, I think, just another handful of people his actual feelings on how this was, or how he felt about the Trinity. But eventually, as these people do, Barrow would move on to greener pastures. He would become the Doctor of Divinity for the King. He would eventually return to to Trinity College, returning as the Master of Trinity. But he leaves that Lucasian chair of mathematics open, and in 1669, at age 26, Isaac Newton becomes the second mathematics teacher at Cambridge.
Okay, with that, let's take a bathroom break.
Okay.
Well, hey there, all you sexy historians. How you guys doing?
It is time for
Socials.
Where can they find us on Instagram?
If they want to follow us, they can find us at Historically High Pod on Instagram.
That goes the same for Threads as well. You can also find us on Twitter.
Tell them about Twitter.
Historically High. That's historically HI on Twitter.
And if you want to email any of your comments or suggestions, where can they find us at, Adam?
At historically high podcast at gmail.com.
Gmail. All right, and back to the show. All right, let's get into this next thing because how?
It's pretty awesome. This was kind of my, if I could take away being able to explain this, I took away something great from this episode. 1669, he takes over the mathematics department, second mathematics year. You'd think that that's awesome, right? Well, 1668, he completed his first reflecting telescope. He expands on this already created refracting telescope. Instead of using lenses, he's using mirrors. The reason that a refracting telescope uses lenses is because it's able to magnify things like a magnifying glass.
Okay, please explain how this happens.
So with a refracting telescope, the light comes in, it hits the first lens, it's then refracted and expanded to a second lens, and then that comes up into your eye, into the eyepiece. I keep putting my hand, yeah.
So it is literally a tube in which you're looking down one end of it, out the other end of it. And with those, it's not just two flat lenses, because that wouldn't have any magnification. I forgot how you said it. Is the first lens the concave or is it the convex?
The first one coming in is going to be the convex. And think of it, the way that I think I was taught in like third grade, never forgot, is anything that pushes in is concave because it makes a cave.
Yeah.
And anything that's convex is faced out.
Okay, so what it basically does is it takes the light in, or whatever it's sensing, it's whatever it's pulling in as the image, it concentrates it, right?
Oh, that's the reflecting.
Okay.
We're still on refracting.
Okay, so the refracting essentially expands the image.
Yep.
But then the way you're viewing it, because you're reviewing it through a convex, or to you it would be concave because the way you're looking at it, they're two opposite facing convex concave lenses. And the way that it comes in, it then shrinks it back down, but still magnified because of the curvature of it to where you can actually see.
It shrinks down until it hits another convex lens that's in the actual eyepiece.
Yeah.
And that's what expands it and makes it bigger.
Okay.
The issue with this is on the bigger first lens that it hits, there can be kind of abnormalities depending on how it's ground. So you get something that's called chromatic aberration.
Please explain the grinding thing. This was like when they were talking about how these things had to be constructed. It's not like you could just go to a fucking glass blower and be like, I need this. This was it just a big piece of glass that they then have to like sand and shape?
Yeah, it's just basically you would have, sometimes you would use like a foot pedal powered grinding wheel and it would just be this big stone and you would hold that lens against there and you would ground it down until you got it to where it was. And then you would have different kind of stones that you could set them in. So if you wanted to make a convex lens, you would press it into a stone that has a depression on it and it would grind itself down until it took on that shape.
But then you also had to polish it and do all that kind of stuff in order to make it clear enough.
You got to go down to a fine enough grit to make it completely clear to be able to see through.
So you're literally sitting there having to take a hunk of glass and just manually grind that thing down in order to make the lenses for these telescopes. And someone just did that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it was Newton because he expands on this and he makes it better, but there was it Galileo that had the one previously?
I want to say Galileo and Descartes both had their own that they did. And there might have been somebody even sooner that his name's escaping me. But
the simple fact that at some point someone had an idea and said, hey, I'm going to look through this because what was the thing in nature? Because everything comes from nature. Someone sees something and they're like, oh, all of a sudden this looks bigger. It must be because of this. What led someone to understand that if you make something see-through, concave or convex, it changes how something appears at the other side?
That's a mystery, but I go even further. Like, how did we figure out glass? How do we figure out
Lightning strikes.
Lightning strikes, yes, but how do you create it? Because I believe sand has a melting temp of either 16 or 1800 degrees that you would have to create. That's not a fire. You have to create a kiln or a furnace or something to be able to get that heat up enough to be able to melt that glass or to melt that sand.
I think it's cause and effect. So you find out the glass can be made from a lightning strike because of the intense heat. And because you then test it against regular fires, you're like, obviously it's not as hot as it needs to be. You then have to create something that can get up to that temperature to make this, but then you find its application for so many other different things.
So you just make something that can get hotter and hotter until you finally melt the sand.
Do you think it was a drop of water? Someone was looking something and they had a drop of water and they looked through it, and because it changed the image on the other side.
The magnification through the drop.
Yeah, that got someone thinking like, well, if I can create something I can see through, but that has a different curvature.
Yeah, so I believe concave at the top, convex in the eyepiece, and what it would do would be the top.
Spyglass.
Yeah.
It's a spyglass.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Essentially, that's kind of what it is. But if you don't get the first lens completely perfect, if there's any imperfections in the glass, it'll give something called chromatic aberration. And basically what that is if you're looking at something, it almost puts a color halo around, like if you're looking at the moon. It kind of blurs it out a little bit. So you don't get quite as sharp of an image around the edges. And that's very important if you're trying to look at something under magnification to get its size, because you can't tell a defined circle around it. So Newton's looking at this. He's like, well, shit. I've learned a lot about mirrors. Descartes taught me a lot about mirrors. I believe also the aforementioned and future mentioned Robert Hooke did a few things with mirrors. And Newton decides that he's going to create this reflecting telescope using mirrors instead of a lens. Basically, his setup could be much smaller because you didn't need the range in between the two lenses. So I believe it was about 6 to 7 inches long. And what it was there would be a mirror all the way at the back of the tube. And then about maybe a third of the way up, there would be another mirror that's at a 45-degree angle, and that would actually point out to where the eyepiece is. The eyepiece still has that same lens that the original telescope has because that's what magnifies it and makes it bigger in your eye.
And it would also have a similar one at the very front of the telescope.
I don't think it did.
Oh, okay.
I think it was just, it sucked all the light in. And the mirror that was sitting at the bottom, the first mirror that the light hits is concave, so it's facing in.
Okay.
And as it's facing in, kind of like a wok works when you're cooking, everything is being forced by gravity down into the bottom where it's the hottest part.
Okay.
So this is basically concentrating the light inside of this bowl of this mirror. As soon as the light's concentrated in there after it hits it, it then shoots it up towards the 45-degree angle mirror. 45-degree angle mirror then reverts it into the eyepiece. The eyepiece then magnifies it again.
Because it's the other shape.
Except for you don't have to deal with this chromatic aberration because you don't have to worry about imperfections in a lens.
Is it that as well as the fact that the mirror somehow removes the additional reflection, somehow removes that as well?
It's just about removing the imperfections in a lens. Because it's never going to be exactly perfect with the way the light hits it.
Did he just do that design so he can make it smaller?
I think it was smaller, more compact, but also it becomes more proficient because if you can get rid of that aberration, like we were just talking about, you can start measuring the radius and circumference of these things.
You can just see more detail on things.
And also, you have a refracting telescope that they said was about, you could magnify things up to about 20 times. Mm-hmm. With the reflecting telescope, it was between 30 and 40 times. It was enough so that at 100 feet away, they could hold up the Royal Society's manual, and Newton could look through the telescope and he could actually read the manual from 100 feet away.
Oh, shit.
That was how good this thing was at magnifying things. And he lets cat out of the bag. He builds this stuff. He didn't have somebody build it for him. He built everything.
He's now moved from a almost strictly like not theoretical, because he's working towards solving this stuff.
He's building his own tools.
Correct. He's moving through more of a, instead of just a thinking type way of doing things, he's now engineering.
Yeah. And he's engineering these things to be more efficient, and at the same time, if it's more efficient for him, it's going to be better than whatever the last thing was. Mm-hmm. So he gets these names. He shares this with Barrow. Apparently, he's bringing this onto campus and like showing certain kids that are looking into astronomy, like, I got something better. You want to take a look at this?
That's got to seem like fucking witchcraft, right?
Oh,
like
yeah,
someone comes
100%.
in, you maybe have seen a telescope before, but like you said, these had to be big telescopes. All of a sudden, he walks in and sets this 6-inch long tube on the desk, and they're like, what's that? And he's like, yeah, it's a telescope. They're like, no, it's not. Like, telescopes are huge. He's like, no, trust me, it's a telescope. They're like, what? Am I going to be able to see across the room or something like that? He's like, okay, let's do this. Has them look through it, and they're just like, what is this? How are you doing this?
He pays Barrow $50 to go onto the other end of campus and pull his pants down and moon somebody. He's like, moon during the daytime. You see that in telescope? Also,
astronomy.
And at the same time, the eyepiece is on the side. This is revolutionary. This has never been seen before.
Yeah.
And these are we still have reflecting telescopes that use basically the same thing today. We still have refracting telescopes that have gotten a little bit better, but again, you still are prone to that aberration that makes things a little less clear. Telescopes, I mean, I don't really understand them. I can explain that, but there's still like the magic of it to me.
I'm not going to lie. I haven't thought about getting a telescope in a long time. I'm tempted to just jump on like Facebook Marketplace or something and see if someone's trying to get rid of one. It doesn't even have to be that great, but getting stoned and just going outside and staring up at stars and looking at the moon and stuff, that's got to be pretty fucking cool.
I'm afraid of being accused of using it nefariously.
I would be taking it back in my house.
Yeah.
I would be able to, or go put it in the shed or something like that.
And every time I use it outside, I have to put up a sign that says I'm not looking in your windows or something like that.
I would make it very known of what direction I'm pointing at.
You would spray paint it the brightest color possible.
I would be out in the middle of the yard, or it looks like I couldn't be peeping on anybody using this thing.
Yeah, just a wild thing. But Barrow gets a word of it. Barrow, who is Doctor of Divinity, he's headed that direction. He's kind of having these interactions with the king a little bit before he actually becomes the Doctor of Divinity. When he finds out about this, goes to something called the Royal Society. The Royal Society is fairly recent.
How is that not a superhero's name?
Doctor of Divinity?
You know what that sounds like?
Oh, that's got to be a religious superhero.
I was going to say, that's exactly what it sounds like. I think what it is when they try to do those religious, like comic books and everything that are alternatives, Dr. Divinity has got to be like someone like Doctor Strange, but he gets to use God magic, which is actually witchcraft, so they kill him immediately.
He's the villain. He's somehow Dr. Divinity, but he's the villain. He's using the divine powers for the dark arts.
Harry Potter's the villain.
Okay. Okay, we got a little bit before the next Harry Potter explanation comes up. Yeah, the next reference happens.
Okay, so he builds this telescope. Word of it is getting around. He gets invited by the Royal Society. And I don't think we really explained in detail the Royal Society.
We did talk about it, I think, during Darwin. Because wasn't Darwin a member of the Royal Society?
He was.
Okay.
Yep. So it takes place even this far back. The Royal Society is basically a collection. It's a men's club. It's a social club of all like the great thinkers and everything like that. People that are deemed... Probably some of them aren't that smart, but have some pull, societal pull. But this is basically like a old boys club for intellectuals. And they only invite in people that are making breakthroughs or being, doing all this stuff, contributing to science. They get word of this telescope and they're like, hey, why don't you actually go ahead and bring this thing in so we can get a look at it?
I can't decide if the Royal Society is either a fart sniffing club or something that would be fun to be a part of.
I don't think it'd be that fun to be a part of. I think it'd be stuffy as fuck.
Yeah. And everybody kind of feels like they're, well, maybe they wouldn't portray themselves as somebody who feels like they're smarter than me. Maybe that's just how I would feel being in their presence.
I mean,
but
you could feel one of two ways, and I think they could be both into the spectrum. You could either have enough wherewithal to know that you're surrounded in a room of people that are on your level, but in different disciplines. So you could either have the understanding that, like, I'm really good at this. This guy I respect because he's really good at this, but have that knowledge of being like, I know that I don't know more than him because he's an expert. Or it could be the other way. You've always been the smartest person in the room. You get around a bunch of people who are also used to all being the smartest guys in the room, and everyone's just like, fuck you, you're stupid, I'm the smartest.
just a outsmarting circle jerk.
I'm pretty sure it's the latter.
Gotta probably be, yeah. So, yeah, this Royal Society is a pretty big deal. And Barrow ends up telling the Royal Society about the telescope. He also informs the king because the king's pretty big into the Royal Society. I'm sure that's one of he's a charter member that didn't have to take a test.
Any king that gets in there is just automatically part
exactly. Of it. He puts on this demonstration of the telescope, and I believe this was like 1669, 1670, somewhere in there. Time doesn't really matter. In this demonstration, the telescope set up, Barrow brings it in and he sets it up, and Newton walks in and he sees this beam coming from the window that hits the side of the telescope, and it just looks so divine, this immaculate tool that he created. And he walks over and he asks Barrow if everything's ready, and Barrow says, got it. Then all of a sudden the doors swing open and there's a hushed silence. And King Charles II has to come sashaying in. He's probably wearing his crown. He's got his scepter. He's got his cape on.
What's on their capes? You know how they're like the white fur, but they have the black in it? Mm-hmm. I'm sure he has one of those. Yeah, gotta be. Almost like a fur boa. And he comes walking in and he strolls into this hushed silence, and everybody's looking around thinking, oh my God, the king is here. What is the king here to see? Why is he walking towards that strange, looks like broken telescope? Then he leans down and he looks into the eyepiece for a second. He spots a couple things around the room. He looks out the window. He leans up and he smiles and walks out of the room. And as soon as those doors close, the Royal Society just breaks out in cheers. Mm-hmm. They're so pumped that King Charles walked in, and he gave his smile and he gave his nod, and he was pleased with what he saw out of the Royal Society. Is that everybody being like, cool, we get more checks just to sit around here and talk about how smart we are? Or is that like the king acknowledged us? Yeah, I mean, I think if he's happy with something and you go to him and it's like, hey, Royal Society needs a little bit more scratch for further research into telescopes, he's just like, telescopes, you say? Yes, please have some gold. Let me see one. He's like, I'm going to need one of these, and I'm going to need to aim it right at the wench's chambers. I will be spotting more of my harem. Isaac, can you come over here for a second? How quickly can you make a couple more of these? It's like, I can make several more. He's like, perfect. I'd like to look at the stars. He's like, silly. Whatever you want to look at, my liege. Silly question. I know you're kind of the idea man here. Would it be possible to make one of these that can see through walls? Or at night. Night is when I like to do my looking. And of course, they're shocked by this. They're surprised by this. Barrow also has another bullet in the chamber, because he reaches down and he pulls out some of these other manuscripts that he had. Oh, boy. I forget. Oh, it's calculus work. It was some of his calculus work. Obviously, him and Barrow talk about mathematics. Mm-hmm. He's been introduced to this calculus. Barrow goes ahead and passes this along to the society, and the society invites him to come and basically publish his notes. And if he publishes his notes, then they're basically up for, I guess, argument within the Royal Society. Yeah, so the way I kind of understand it is to basically lay claim to an idea, you kind of had to be the first one to publish it. Mm-hmm. Regardless if you came out with it, I mean, it would take a lot. It's kind of the same thing, like if someone gets accused of something and it's announced that they're accused of something, it's a lot harder. Like, in most people's eyes, they don't even really see, if it gets dismissed or anything like that, they never really see that 8-page article that says we're retracting the story or whatever we might have done. in this scenario, I think where you have to be able to publish something to take credit for it. But at the same time, it's a race to be like, fuck, if I don't publish this and somebody else is working on this and they publish first, all this work I did was for nothing. At the same time, if I rush this and it's not correct, I could get torn apart and then not be able to publish anything again. But that's one of the big advantages of the Royal Society is I feel like it's kind of like Oprah's book club. If you're a member of the Royal Society and you end up coming out with a paper or you come out with a book, I think basically having that Royal Society kind of stamp, like this is from a member of the Royal Society, it's obviously got to be well thought out versus just like, oh, hey, I'm Isaac Newton and I'm not a member and I just, went ahead and wrote this book. They're going to be like, and who are you again? Where have we heard about you from?
I'm the calculus guy.
I'm the telescope man.
Also, there is the issue of if you did develop something but you didn't publish it, somebody else beats you to it, you got to bring the receipts. And oftentimes the only receipts that you have is any correspondence that you have back and forth with the person to try to not really legitimize that you were the one that came up with it, but almost to cast the accusation of plagiarism.
Yeah.
Like, he did publish this first, but he also stole this directly from a letter that I wrote him.
Or a section of it or something like that without providing due credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it becomes kind of a game of how good is your archive of conversation with some of these people.
And it's also like, yeah, we're in the same club, but we're secretly all working against each other to try to beat each other to the punch.
It's a race to the top every single time.
Yeah.
So Newton shows up, and of course, the calculus that kind of piqued their interest, he ends up publishing the paper or the notes of colors is what it's called. Pretty much well received by almost everybody. The Royal Society had a curator of experiments whose name was Robert Hooke, the man that's been mentioned a couple times already, immediately criticizes the findings of Newton's work. One of the things that he criticized him about was some of the key pieces of material were actually an untested theory that Newton had put in there. And so there was no evidence to back it up. And this theory that he had aligned with some things that Hooke had done, some experiments that Hooke had done that were posited in this theory and then not credited to Hooke. Hooke immediately points to him and yells, plagiarism, you stole my idea for this theory. And Newton doesn't have a lot to back it up because it's untested. So he can't really put forth the experiments that he came to this conclusion with because he hadn't come to the conclusion yet. He just thought that it was feasible.
Yeah. Which I wonder if part of that also is, do you get an overconfidence in your feelings and like, listen, I've been right about 80% of this stuff without having to really, go back and like correct myself.
Yeah.
I got to be right. I know how this next 20% is going to work out based on the 80%. So I'm just going to put how it's going to be a result of. Like, you got to have a little bit of that, right?
It has to be. Yeah. If it's logical and if you've looked at his test results, his experimental results.
It's like you're trying to explain it to your math teacher, though, in the classes that they required you to show work. And it's like, we'll show your work. How'd you get to the answer? And it's like, is it important? Like, yeah, you're going to fail this if you don't show me.
80% of the grade, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
So part of this whole of colors notes that he published was a deviation of the belief that light comes in waves into his belief that light is made up of particles. This kind of comes under fire from, I want to say he's another German guy, who believed that the idea of wave theory was more accurate, but did leave open the idea that particles could be a part of it too. There's just certain waves that hit, and there's certain particles that are made up of it.
That's someone saying like, fuck, I don't know if particles could be a part of it and no waves could be a part of it, so I got to leave this open-ended. I can't go fully against it because you see what happens if someone finds out you propose something that you didn't test.
Yeah. Hooke ripped into him. This other guy probably, like you say, extended the olive branch and said, I agree with your assumption that there could be particles in there if you would maybe rethink this idea of waves as well to maybe come to a conclusion that it's a conglomeration of both. Neither one of us are wrong. We're just half right. And So this kind of starts this war between Hook and Newton, and it becomes a war of the pens. And at this point in time, Newton's kind of ready to exit from not only the society, but society as a whole, and just go back to Cambridge and go back to his hole.
I fucking hate people.
Yeah, he was called out. And this probably comes from his childhood experience of maybe him coming to Pawpaw with something and saying, hey, what do you think about this? And him just criticizing Newton for whatever he had come up with.
It's the armchair psychologist that just wants to have us sit here and try to pick this guy apart. This could be something, too, as simple as if he's so used to trying to come to these conclusions by himself, the isolation, he's checking his own work. Yeah, it does appear to be right. But at no point has any other person aside from himself been like, no, that's wrong. And then when someone accuses him of being wrong, when he's like, he comes to the conclusion during his work that he's wrong, he just goes and fixes it.
Yeah.
No one knows that he had to accuse himself. When he gets publicly called out, that might be one of the first times, especially with someone that was probably a little bit skittish about like getting this stuff released.
Ham-handed. Oh, I thought you were talking about Hook.
No.
With Newton being skittish to publish.
Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, you're being told you're wrong in a very public way when this hasn't happened to you. He's just like, nope, fuck this. I'm going back to doing things how I was. You guys aren't getting any more of my stuff.
But I kind of love it.
No, I do. Like, I understand it, is what I'm saying.
Isn't that how most people should be? Like, if you just know that you're right, instead of trying to fight and argue and clear yourself out in public, you can just walk away thinking...
But he didn't prove that he was right. That's the thing. I think in this situation where he had obviously come to so many incorrect conclusions, not the ones he published or anything like that, but that's part of the scientific method. Mm-hmm. He's not getting a theory and testing it, and the first time he tested or the first method he tested with is proving him right. He is used to failure over and over again. He's just never used to public failure.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he's at this highest echelon of essentially the intellectual community in fucking Great Britain and probably one respected in all of Europe. And they're calling him out on one of the first things he's ever actually made public for them to review. Yeah. And the guy that's pointing the finger at him, Hook, yeah, he's a fucking douchebag, but he's just like, it's you. You're the one that's against me.
It's enough for Newton to retreat. Mm-hmm. Newton's had enough of this. He takes off. There's multiple attempts from the secretary of the society to reach out, basically trying to goad him back in, telling him, hey, those fees that you have to pay to be a part of the Royal Society, don't worry about it. We'll cover it. We'll sponsor you. Just come back in for free. And it's like, it wasn't really the financials of the situation.
Dues are in the rears.
Yeah, I just didn't really care too much. And so there's kind of radio silence between Newton and the Royal Society. And the Royal Society they got that itch. They got that feeling. They got that first hit, that telescope crack, and they want this back. Then they got the colors, and that was just another hit, and now they need it more.
Because they've also probably looked at this and gone back over it and really taken a look at it in depth and been like, yeah, he was probably actually right with that last 20%. Yeah, he couldn't prove it or anything, but we actually found out that there was some merit to it.
Yeah. So they're looking around the room like, how do we get more of that? Robert Hooke starts to think about it. He's like, well, I mean, I got a pretty good rise out of him when I called him out. Mm-hmm. Do you think maybe if I wrote him a letter and started talking some shit, it might stimulate him into maybe showing us some more stuff based upon the other things that I criticize him?
His stance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Hooke does. And there's kind of this weird hot and cold relationship in these letters. The reason that I say hot and cold is not necessarily like they start sending them more aggressively and then less aggressively or anything like that. Like, there's a warmness to where at one point Newton kind of concedes that he says something along the lines of, I have only gotten this far, and if I have gotten this far, it is because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. Mm-hmm. Writing that to Hooke is probably a little bit of an admission of like, yeah, dude, I did look at your stuff, but understand that what I took from your stuff, I pushed so much further forward than you did.
I think if someone ever called him out on that and was like, were you talking about Hooke? He's like, fuck no.
Yeah, it was
Galileo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He gave it just enough to where if Hooke read it, he might feel some fuzzy feelings. Mm-hmm. Plausible deniability for everybody else that it was somebody else.
It's sending a you up text to several people and everyone thinks they're special about it.
But then there was a point in time where Hooke would start to challenge him on things. And one of the things that he challenged him on was this idea about an elliptical orbit of the planets. they went back and forth for a few years just talking about this and going over everything. And eventually it kind of comes to a point in time where Newton just stops answering letters because he just falls out of interest.
I don't know if he just like, he's like, I know you're trying to goad me into this shit.
Well, I think there was definitely a little bit of that, but he kind of puts away these studies of light and mathematics and gravity, and he starts to focus more of his time on alchemy and theology. And it makes total sense because he's finally got some decent money being a fellow, not a whole ton. He's buying furnaces. He's buying all of this other equipment that he can't make.
He sets
for
up a
alchemy.
lab, I think, at his office or Cambridge.
And he starts working on kind of alchemy quietly, and he dives into theology. His theological studies continued to shape this belief that scriptural answers were far more aligned with God's word than what church dissertations were saying.
This is the textbook.
Yeah.
To him, that was the textbook.
And just like he did, where he would copy out sections from Aristotle, he would copy out sections from Galileo. He's copying out sections of the Bible. He gets really, really into the book of Daniel and then New Testament Revelation.
I feel like he's trying to, his entire life, crack a cipher. He, God is I don't want to compare it to this, but it's the only thing I think of. God is the enigma machine. And he's the allies sitting there trying to make sense of all these things. And all he's thinking is, I'm looking in these places for clues. I found some clues, but I think there's clues in other places. So then he's going to theology and he's going to alchemy and he's like, I got to get this. I got to build this key to decipher what this mystery is. And the more keys I have, the more likely I am to try to actually solve this. It's crazy to me that he's combining the two when there's this separation that's been proven between them and everything, where one is essentially, it's a telephone game of this myth, of this story, of this person and everything that's happened in the past. And the other one is science that can explain in a logical way why things are occurring. And he's looking for answers in both. And he puts them on par. To him, I don't think he saw a separation of it.
Yeah.
I thought he was like, this is the textbook. This is what is going to give me some clues and also some like insight. But this is also, all of this stuff is the same as this.
It's just, I have to use one to figure out the other.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is why when we were talking during the week, I'd like to bring Newton back for two things. First off, I'd like to bring him back and show him, I think it's a particle accelerator. However, we've figured out how to turn like lead into gold. It's possible. We know how to do it now. It's just not as cost effective to create the gold. Like it takes more money to create the amount of gold to counteract it. And probably also because, again, if we're creating more gold, it makes gold less valuable.
Did you look at how that occurs? Did you dive or did you hold yourself back?
I was so deep into this that I couldn't open another door.
Okay, good. I had a question, but it's probably...
We will cover... I promise you there will be a time when we cover this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fascinating that we can do it. But secondly, I would bring him back. I would print off every single one of the Zodiac Killer ciphers, and I'd set him down in front of him and be like, go to work. See what you can do. And I guarantee you he would be in on this. And it's one of those things where, like, we have computers that have run algorithms on these ciphers to try to break them.
Yeah.
If it came down to a Paul Bunyan steam engine type deal with Newton and a supercomputer to bust a cipher, I'd put $50 on Newton. I fully believe that his mind, I don't know how, I can't explain why.
Like Alan playing blackjack. Seeing all the little,
Like, I think he could do it better because he can put emotion that an algorithm can't.
I just want to put him in front of a telescope, give him access to NASA and be like, here you go, man.
The Webb telescope, the new one, and just let him see everything.
Stuff that he developed went into making the Hubble telescope. Like, that's how far-reaching this guy is.
Yeah. I forgot where we were.
He goes to alchemy and theology stuff.
Yes. Okay. So as he's looking into theology, again, he's writing these notes.
Alchemy is still like prohibited, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you're still a heretic at the same time if you're doing this. Practice of alchemy, like we said, is punishable by death. His pursuits were done in secret, which is where kind of this coding system comes in. He writes 10 million words that we have He burned a bunch of shit. There's a bunch of stuff. There's 10 million words that he put out. Of the 10 million words, about 1 million of them were on alchemy.
So 1/10 of his stuff
Yep.
is based on alchemy.
Yep. And that's... I can find my phone that I dropped because there was no way I was going to remember this. This brings us to Harry Potter reference, I believe, number 2. Order of the Phoenix, longest Harry Potter book. Word count, 257,000 words. That would equate to 38.9 copies of the Order of the Phoenix to equal all of Newton's writings that we have.
On all of his writings.
All of his writings that we have. So you stack basically 39 Order of the Phoenix books up, and that's everything that he wrote. 1 million of that was just solely on alchemy.
On something that wasn't even allowed.
Yep. Pretty nuts, huh?
It's just how his mind works of saying, like, if this is a natural science, then God is the one that created this.
Yeah.
So why is in his mind, there was never a thought like, you making this, it's like weed. Like, why is this illegal? Like, it's so stupid. Like, it shouldn't be illegal.
And I'm sure while he was handling that mercury with bare hands and not understanding it was slowly poisoning him, he was probably like, why doesn't everybody like this like I do? Why?
Okay. If you did not know mercury was dangerous,
Yeah.
could you find another substance that made you believe in a godly miracle more than mercury? It looks like metal. It's reflective. It's liquid. It doesn't, and then when it flows back together, there's something about the attraction that it can like come back together. Or maybe I'm thinking Terminator 2.
See, I go to Silver Surfer.
Okay.
I go to I think not the original one, but the one that came out late 90s.
Yeah, Chris Evans and the all those. Yeah.
Yeah, I just see the Silver Surfer turn into Mercury and then reform into the Silver Surfer.
Yeah, but would there be another? I mean, you show it to anyone now, and you're just like, it's like you give like someone a thing of mercury, and you're just looking at it and like, I know this is dangerous, so I'm not going to touch this stuff, but fuck, this is fascinating in this jar.
It looks like a lot of fun to play with.
It does. And so, as someone that is experimenting in alchemy, you've got to be looking at that, and in your head, and you're looking at all these other, liquids and stuff like that, and you're just like, the answer's in this one. It's got to be, because this is unlike anything else. So of course you're going to be working with it a lot.
But think about just discovering mercury out in the wild.
Yeah.
Like it's in the bottom of a hole and it's sitting on top of the
How many
dirt.
people do you think that killed? Because that had to have happened
a lot.
Being a natural thing back to when, Cro-Magnon and, Homo sapien and all that kind of stuff, coming along a pool and looking at it and just being like, what is it? Drinking some of it and being like, oh, and then that had to kill so many things.
Yeah. I've had a long held theory that the most brave people in history were also the dumbest people in history because at a point in time where you didn't know what you could eat, what you couldn't eat, you'd probably send the dumbest guy to eat a rock and see what happens to him. Like the smartest guy wouldn't be testing the foods. The dumbest guy in your tribe is the one that's seeing if it's going to make you sick or not. But at the same time, he's doing all of these different things. And the thing of alchemy is that if anybody's ever figured out the philosopher's stone, nobody knows because you keep that a secret. You don't let that out into the world because if you let that out into the world, then everybody else has a secret. So as you're doing this testing and he's writing 1 million words on it and all that stuff.
And you don't need to be known. You don't need to go out. You can change whatever you want into gold. You don't have to go out to try to acquire gold. You can go spend it, but you also probably don't want to be found because you're immortal. And
you've unlocked the secrets of the world.
Yeah.
It's just
I think for him, that was part of this is going to sound really weird. I think for him, why he goes back to that. Because thinking of it like, how could that one thing be the thing that unlocks this equation of God that he's trying to figure out? I think he looked at that and he said, maybe the equation can't be solved in one lifetime. Maybe that's it. Maybe you have to do certain things about solving smaller problems to then give you the time and the knowledge to be able to solve the larger problem. And the way to solve the larger one is to have an infinite amount of time in order to solve it.
Yeah, you could almost become your own god because you could solve all of his.
Yeah, but to him, I don't think it was that. It wasn't like a heresy. Like, can you imagine if you went to the church? And that's why the whole thing with alchemy, because they knew that that's what the point. That's what kind of the end goal of alchemy always was, is to be able to transmute stuff. You shouldn't be able to do that. That's God's original plan. If they had, they looked at alchemy and in their mind it was by making yourself immortal, you're going against God's natural order. For him, because he viewed that as a science that was created by God, he's like, it's not heresy. He wouldn't make this able to happen
Yeah.
if it was heresy. He's giving us a key to the rest of this problem.
Mine would just be, well, God imbued me with the intelligence to figure his stuff out. So
Yeah.
therefore, that was God's plan that I figured this out. It's a real quick workaround.
I mean, you're still going to get your head chopped off for it.
Yeah, for sure. But if you did truly become immortal, you just got to carry it around with you in like a basket or something like that, right?
I don't know if that's how it worked.
Okay. Is it regeneration? Is it like a lizard's tail?
Oh no, like Highlander lore, if you get your head chopped off, like that's how the other person absorbs your powers and then you die.
Okay. Well, obviously, Newton's not around. He never did achieve his goal, but it almost broadened his understanding of chemistry because alchemy and chemistry are different, but the core tenets of alchemy involve chemistry. So he's also just learning on the fly all of these other things, including potentially the mercury poisoning that we'll talk about probably happened a little later in life.
Oh yeah.
There were some other things, some other defining characteristics of Newton was he always looked like he had a lot of different hairstyles, but kind of the one thing was by the age of 28, he was basically completely gray, like white gray. And they believed that it was because of all the mercury poisoning that he had submitted himself to.
Yeah.
There was, I believe it was 1979, there was a claim that somebody had a lock of Newton's hair and they tested it. The mitochondrial DNA, they got an inconclusive reading. I think it was because they didn't have a good enough sample to compare it to. What they did find was there were high enough levels of mercury within the follicles that they figured that it was a toxic exposure that this person had had.
I don't know who this is, but they really like playing with mercury.
So if somebody's claiming it's Newton and there's a high level of mercury in it, that's probably almost as good as DNA to figure it out. This is where things get nuts. And I say that knowing full well what all we talked about before, but 1680, this guy named Gottfried Kirsch spots the Great Comet first. Newton would end up observing the comet. He would calculate its orbit. He understood that the path demonstrated his theory of this universal gravitation by predicting that the sun's gravity would cause the comet to orbit it. He applied it to all the other celestial bodies, proving that they would follow an elliptical, a parabolic, or a hyperbolic orbit. Chris and I gave it a shot a little bit earlier as to why these orbits happen, and two great minds that you guys are listening to couldn't really come up with it, so it happens.
Someone explained it to us like we're 12. So what we came up with, a very, very summarized version of it is, and this is what also Newton kind of postulates as well, is we all assume that the sun's gravity combined with the rotation of the planet in its orbit around, it's a balance of gravitational force from the sun, but it's also the centrifugal force. It's like we talk about in the space episodes. It's how they do the slingshot around the moon. They find the point in which the speed and the level of gravity match each other enough to where it's not pulling you in, but you're going fast enough to resist it.
It's going to slingshot you.
It's going to slingshot you. With his theory is that not only was it gravity from the sun that was impacting the planets, it was also the other planets and their force on themselves. So it would be both the sun's gravitational pull for Earth, but it would also be Mars and Venus's gravitational pull as well, pulling one direction, pulling the other, and then also the sun pulling in a direction. Combined with the size of the planet, that's what would determine, because he's into mass, not weight, what would determine why there was a certain distance between planets, because a larger one is going to have to be a little bit farther out, because if it was closer, it would have too much gravitational pull on it, and it would pull it into the sun. I don't understand, though, how it's not a circular orbit, and it's an elliptical one, because at some point you're getting further away from the sun, which means that the gravity would be less, yet somehow it still follows around that curve and then comes back getting again closer to the sun before going out. But then somehow it doesn't slingshot us. It keeps us going. Is that because the other planets are in a different position at that time, and so you're not getting that different pull from the other? I don't know.
Yeah, are the planets in alignment, and so as you're circling around one and getting closer to another, that gravitational pull pulls you closer to them, and then as you are turning back around, yeah, it's just we could talk about this all day and not come to the right conclusion. But what it does is it gives Newton kind of this theory that he's now tested, and he just again puts it in his holster.
Do you think that for him, he's looking at the first part of his life is spent looking at the natural, the natural laws that are going on around him and on the planet? After, he solves as many of those as he can, or gets to the point where he's bored about just the natural laws of Earth and he starts looking up at these other planets, he's like, yeah, why am I just doing this here? Like, if there's an answer, there's so much more stuff out there. That's got to be another part of the equation, is trying to figure this out too. And I've been sitting in here with all of my focus on this one planet.
Do you think that's the mass element, and knowing that planets are going to be the largest mass that he could...
Like they would be the biggest, I guess, testing?
Yeah.
It would be easier to test. I don't know.
Yeah, either way, maybe it's just the fact that he already had that love of the celestial bodies that created this whole idea. 1684, an astronomer named Edmund Halley, famous for Halley's Comet, not the Hale-Bopp Comet, but Halley's Comet, came to Newton in 1684 again, don't know why I wrote it twice, to discuss planetary orbits. And basically, Halley's Comet that he sees ends up passing once, and then he spots it on the return pass in this motion, in an orbit. And so he comes to him to talk about the planetary orbits. And Newton's kind of like, yeah, I got something for you. And
You're just now figuring this out?
Yeah. And he goes, okay, well, lay it on me, big guy. Let me see what you got. Newton kind of looks around. He can't find anything. He's like, I can't find my papers right now. Here's a bar napkin. Let me sketch something out for you. I'll show you. I'll hand it over to you. Tell me what you think. He sketches it out to him, and Haley's like, this answers every question that I ever had, and you've just been sitting on this.
Fuck me.
Yeah, I've devoted my life to this, and this was just sitting here the whole time. It's like, well, 4 years.
Give it to me on a cocktail napkin.
Yeah. So, in leaving, Newton makes him a promise. I'll look for my stuff. Once I find it, I will send it to you.
This is just the stuff I can remember off the top of my head.
Among all the other shit that's shoved in my head, this is just kind of my summation of it.
You'll have to excuse me. I worked with Mercury this morning, so I'm not as sharp as I usually am.
So he sends these papers off to Halley. Halley ends up reading these papers, and he goes to the Royal Society, and he's like, take a look at this. He goes back to Newton. He goes, we're going to need you to write a full treatise of this, and then the Royal Society wants to publish it. It's like, okay, I guess I can do that. He writes his full treatise out.
He's just like, no complaints? Did Hook say anything?
Yeah. Well, he will. He always does. So they go to the Royal Society and say, all right, he's getting ready to publish his treatise. We need to publish this and get it out to the masses. The Royal Society's like, shit. We already published something earlier in the year and kind of blew our publishing budget on this other project. We don't have the money to do it. Haley's like, that's not good. Royal Society looks at Halley and goes, how about you publish it? He goes, like under my name? They go, no. You pay for the publishing, and then we're going to publish it under the Royal Society's name, because Edmund Halley is sort of unknown at this point. With the Royal Society, this will be taken seriously.
You'll also sell more. You'll make more money.
Halley takes payment of all of the old books from the first publishing run that they spent their nut on, all the extra books. He just gets those for free. All the ones that they hadn't sold yet get transferred to Halley in exchange for Halley paying to publish Newton's book. And Halley was like, yeah, I'm all for it. I read this. This is something that everybody needs. I can't wait to see the full thing. You have my full financial backing to publish this. And July 5th, 1687, we get the first edition of the Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica.
It's known as the Principia.
I forgot to write down what it what it is in English. That was an issue. But Principia basically is all you need to know.
It's the philosophy of natural principles and math.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I think so.
Yeah. Principia sounds pretty cool.
That's what it's known as, is the Principia. This is Stephen Hawking, some other Neil deGrasse Tyson has basically said that this body of work, this Principia, is what would you say, not greatest, most impactful, most important?
Yeah, the most important.
The most important scientific book written, just with what it introduces. And
volume 1 included his laws of motion and universal gravitation. And those are, it's funny how we learned them and how they're actually written.
Yeah.
So the first law, the law of inertia, is an object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion with the same speed and in the same direction unless acted upon by an unbalanced force.
Okay.
How do we learn it?
Okay. Go ahead. How do we learn it?
A body in motion stays in motion. A body at rest stays at rest.
Okay.
Like, we don't even worry ourselves about the acted upon part when you start talking about it.
So this goes back to his studies about gravity when he was doing all those guys were doing the ball rolling. How much do you have to release it from along a slope for it to go, an equal distance or whatnot? Their findings were that because if they just slid it down, a ramp, eventually, because of, even if you can't feel it, because of the wind resistance, it's there. And because of the resistance of the object and the ground, because it's also causing resistance, that would cause it to lose its inertia.
This is also what caused me to pull my hand inside my truck.
Yes.
Because it was feeling the wind.
I guess the best analogy for this I can think of, and I guess it's been said, but is a seatbelt in a car crash. In a car crash, the inertia of the vehicle ceases or slows down rapidly.
It's transferred.
Your inertia has not been transferred yet, which is why you start to go forward. You are still at that inertial rate. You might be slowing down a little bit, but it's fractional. The seatbelt is the resistance that actually kills your inertia as well. Newton's point was, if you had an environment in which there were no resistances, no external forces providing a resistance on an object, you could provide it with an amount of force, whatever its rate or inertia is, would never stop. Think of it in the sense of if you're in space and, in sci-fi movies, something gets moved and it will simply just go forever at that speed until it has been acted upon by external forces. It's the same reason why during our Apollo episodes, when they are up in space and they fire those thrusters and they're heading toward the moon, they're traveling thousands of miles per hour. In our heads, that would tear something completely apart. How are they doing this in just a kind of thinner skinned metal spacecraft? There's nothing out there to resist them. The resistance comes in the form of them slowing down using thrusters to provide resistance in the opposite direction.
And if you burn those thrusters, get yourself up to thousands of miles an hour, you cut the thrusters, since there's no gravity to act upon you to slow you down.
That's why you're not burning them the entire time. You just have to get yourself to speed, and then you're coasting. There's nothing to stop you from coasting. Next law?
Next law.
Law of acceleration. This is where we get the equation of force equals mass times acceleration. So it's F equals ma.
Yeah. The acceleration of an object is directly proportional to the net force acting on it and inversely proportional to its mass. This is often expressed as the F plus ma, as Chris just said. Equation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Formula. Whatever it is. Costco. Grocery shopping. You experience this all the time. As you get your cart to first walk in, the cart is relatively easy to control because it's light. You still have to exert force upon it more than the mass of the cart itself in order to go ahead and move it. As you add items, mass, to the cart itself, it becomes, you have to put more force to actually move it. That's all this is. It's a law of acceleration. What they consider acceleration is it's any change in the inertia of something. So with, an object that just becomes larger, You simply have to just apply more mass to it.
Yeah.
At the same time, acceleration can also be considered this deceleration. It's a change in acceleration. In order to do that, a larger object at speed is harder to slow down. It requires more force to slow down. So it works in both ways.
I looked at this in a drunken theory, whereas the mass is just the booze. And at the beginning of the night, you're loose and you're ready to go. And then as you start drinking and adding more mass, it starts to take enough or
It's
more
harder
pressure.
to resist.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's harder to move. It feels like you're maybe walking in quicksand.
It's the same principle as if you had, like, let's say you took a engine, same size. You put it in a car and you took that same engine and put it in a truck. The car is going to accelerate faster because it's much less weight, it has less mass. Bicycle is a great example too, because you're directly applying force, and the more force you apply by pedaling it, the faster you accelerate and are traveling.
Unless you have an e-bike.
Unless you have an e-bike. And then it's just, and then at that point, it actually becomes the law of inertia, because nothing fucking slows that down when you're holding the gas.
Exactly.
Third one.
For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I believe I've been wrong about this my whole entire life.
Okay.
Because I thought it was equal or greater reaction.
No, it's every action has a greater, no, fuck, now you got me messed up. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. My favorite analogy for this is a cannon. If you were to, when you see a cannon fired in a movie or anything like that, a pirate movie, the cannon always gets launched back a little bit. It's why they have blocks and why it usually has ropes and everything, is so they can move the cannon forward. The reason that the cannonball is accelerated so far is because the mass of the cannon is so much greater than the cannonball that the force would rather accelerate and push the cannonball much faster than it can move the cannon backwards. If you had a cannonball and a cannon that were the exact same mass, it would force them away from each other at the same rate.
Be a lot of dead people standing behind the cannon.
Yes. So that's the best way that I can explain it. It's also a rocket launch.
Yep.
You have an amount of gravity or force pulling down based upon the mass of the rocket. You have to create enough thrust or opposite force in order to break that gravity and get more than that gravity, and that's what allows the rocket to lift off.
And as it's pushing off the Earth, it's just so much bigger. We don't feel that same reaction. Yeah, I mean, these all make sense to me. Putting them...
They're givens. If you think about it and someone explains something, you're just like, oh yeah, like that makes so much sense. But at a time when he's around, these things aren't really like addressed.
Yeah. If you tried to give me a force equals mass times acceleration on probably anything, I'm not getting it right. I'm not going to be able to or put that towards anything. I can talk through how it works, but
and
in
then
practice,
also with his thoughts about how if something had zero resistance, a zero resistance environment, it would simply just continue both its speed and course until something was actually external force applied upon it. How does he prove that? It's not like he can just take a ball and roll it and see, well, fuck, it's slowing down. But if there was nothing there, if there was no wind and no table that it was rolling on, it would definitely just go forever.
You can't.
So it seems to me that at the time it might be a little controversial, just because it goes back to that point of being like, but you can't technically prove that.
Yeah.
Once we get to space, we could, but.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is there's kind of this bugaboo that he runs into a little bit later where it's much like I feel about this. When you try to explain an invisible force, you're bordering on either the divine or, if God can't control it, heresy again. So you kind of got to be careful trying to explain invisible things, because you can start to fall away from the belief of God into maybe something else. Also in this, he provided the framework for the understanding of both the terrestrial and celestial mechanics, celestial mechanics. As far as that goes, who do you think is going to pop up at this point in time and start crying foul?
Like Peter Pan. There's always a hook.
Yep. Yeah, he's the Beetlejuice in this scenario. Somebody asked for Hook's opinion on this three times.
Yeah.
He shows up and he immediately starts crying plagiarism again, and just all of these other complaints that he has. It's just so common that it goes on.
I totally thought about that first.
There'd be 2 more editions that would be published after, just kind of, they would add appendices and different things like that. They didn't want to completely rewrite it, so it's just more is being added in to kind of explain it, but also it's being added in to explain it in a less Newtonish way, kind of to be more well understood for the masses, even though it doesn't go to the masses. This is, again, just strictly a smart person book. 1704, well, we're going to jump forward and then jump back a little bit. He publishes his groundbreaking work, Optics. Details all of the experiments and the theories of the nature of light and color.
I poked myself in the eye.
Yeah, the experiment that proved this, he's just explaining what he did, and everyone's like, this dude's crazy.
Yeah.
He stared at the sun?
How do you know? Come over here. I have the rod. I'll show you.
He just holds it up. No, we'll take your word for it.
If you're going to fucking question me, you're gonna see what I tried.
Yeah. It becomes kind of the cornerstone of optics. It impacts the understanding of light behavior, including refraction, reflection, and light dispersion. Hooke would have hated this. The only reason I say that Hooke would have hated this, and probably the reason that he publishes it in 1704, is because in 1703, Robert Hooke dies. So he knows Hooke's dead, and if Hooke's dead, he's not going to be able to counter any of this stuff. Yep. The 1690s.
He goes on a publishing run.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm releasing all of it.
The day that he finds out that Hooke dies, he starts calling publishing houses to try to get it figured out, or he just calls the Royal Society.
He has to call multiple publishing houses because no one single publishing house can handle all of it. He's got to spread it out.
Hey, guys.
He doesn't really do that. But
I hated to hear about Hooke. Do you know what I would like to do in his honor? I would like to publish a book that doesn't mention him at all. In optics, in something that he's already questioned me about before.
Yeah.
In the 1690s, he would start writing these tracts, kind of literary and symbolic representations of the Bible as far as he knows it and can explain it. And in the 1690s, he strikes up a friendship with one John Locke, one famous John Locke that is, I mean, he did a lot of work to supplant or to start this country. He did a lot of his writings were the things that were influencing the way that we were looking at how our Constitution needs to be, different things like that. There was a point in time, it was like for 2 years, that Newton went a little kooky. It was Locke and another gentleman that he was pretty good friends with that he would write letters to accusing them. That's not it. He would write letters accusing them of trying to distract him from his work by introducing him to women when they would go out to pubs. He was basically saying, I could have gotten further with my studies had you not tried to flirt with those women at the bar.
he thought that was going to be some type of like hindrance. It's like, I can tell you one thing, sir. The answer to my questions are not between a woman's legs.
The bosom does not hold the secrets that I request, that I need in my life.
Are you sure?
We've pretty much chalked this up over time.
Never gonna know, Newton, unless you try it.
Yeah. He comes up with the motorboat theory. They've kind of framed this in Newton's life as some time that he was pretty heavy into alchemy, and the good chance that these letters that were coming out going after Locke and this other gentleman were probably because he was exposed to a shitload of mercury at the time and maybe was a little off of his rocker when he was doing it. He does end up pulling it together, and if you think that a guy going a little haywire because he's carrying mercury around is bad for like a scientist or anything like that, it's probably pretty bad if he's a politician, right? I mean, we deal with worse now, or the same now. I don't know if they're doing mercury, but it's certainly something else.
It would explain a lot.
Yeah, a whole lot. Yeah, if it was mercury, it would actually explain more, I think. From 1689 to 1701, Newton was an elected member of Parliament for Cambridge. And this kind of starts because James II, Catholic, he didn't believe that the Catholics had like any sway, like they weren't ever mentioned in the Bible. Like Catholicism just was completely held out of the Bible, therefore it's an obsolete religion that's just faking everything. King James II comes to the throne, he ascends to the throne as a Catholic after a run of Protestants that kind of sets the tone and the norm. So in order to try to fight back from a tyrannical king and pull that power away, he ends up running for Parliament.
Was it his son or his brother? I forgot.
Who?
So there was the first king that didn't believe, that was the Protestant king, that was like
James the
Catholicism.
First, I believe, that came from Scotland.
Okay,
It was
and
James
then-
the Sixth.
And then the one that came in that was the Protestant one. I'm trying to remember what the.
I think it went Protestant, Catholic, Great Revolution.
Okay.
James is in there. They want to try to cede as much power from this Catholic king as possible. The only way that I can protect Cambridge is to run for Cambridge and try to speak for them on their behalf to make sure that this guy doesn't make it happen. Then you get the Glorious Revolution. William the Orange comes in to become William the Third. The Protestant throne is reinstated. I think there's a chance that Newton liked this. But in true Newton fashion, not being able to show his emotions or really understand what's going on, he was elected twice, and he's said to have only spoken up once during that whole entire time.
Wasn't it to open a window?
Close a window because there was a
Because he
draft.
was getting cold.
Yeah. It was the one time that he spoke up in Parliament was to close the window out of 12 years.
Yeah.
Basically. But at the same time, William III comes in. We are going to have some wars that are going on, surprise, surprise, between England and France. And Newton takes a hold of the Warden of the Royal Mint. I believe he was given the job in 1696. I think the Royal Mint was created, or the England's Bank was created in like 1694.
Yeah, so like one of his nieces or something was the king's mistress.
Yeah.
There was some connection in there, and she's like, my uncle needs a job. He's weird. He's like, what does he do? He's a scientist, but he's always like mixing liquids together, and he's crazy. And he's like, sounds like I could use him at the Royal Mint.
Probably a pretty good idea.
And this is during a transitionary time too, because they're switching all of the coinage over in Great Britain to more of a universal one. There's new methods that are coming out to try to. There was a huge issue with counterfeiting because the way that they were just stamping coins, people could just simply either counterfeit them, or there was this thing called coin shaving. Coin clipping. And so imagine you have, a quarter is a bad example because a quarter has what Newton actually came up with to stop the counterfeiting. But if you had just like a solid metal coin.
Say a nickel.
A nickel with a smooth edge on it, they would simply just shave off or clip off a little bit around the outside and make it just a little bit smaller. But then once you melted down all of those shavings, you would have more money. You could either make them into more counterfeit coins or into like an ingot or something like that.
Turning coke into crack.
Yeah, exactly. And it became almost as lucrative to do this than to actually try to earn the money itself.
Yeah, and it becomes a pretty big issue. And as Warden of the Royal Mint, which is actually higher of a level than he dropped down to become head, but as Warden, he got to throw on his Sherlock cap. He started to go after these counterfeiters. He apparently would go undercover, which...
Sting operations.
Yeah, I asked you this just today earlier. Newton had to just be famous with smart people, like with the elites in society. Mm-hmm. So there's probably a pretty good understanding that as Warden, he could go undercover and these common clippers wouldn't understand who this man was.
I don't think there were a lot of people in the coin clipping counterfeit community that were reading a lot of Principia.
They didn't get the newsletter from the Royal Society to know who Newton was.
They probably tried to rob the Royal Society at some point, but yeah.
Well, and there again, I mean, it's not like pictures were printed in papers of these people. Mm-hmm. It was all drawings. So it becomes even tougher to kind of be able to decipher this guy. But he was damn good. He got a lot of counterfeiters.
He put people to death.
Yes, he did.
Because it was a high crime because it was essentially messing with the governmental currency. And so there's a few things that he's the only scientist to do in Great Britain. Being able to put someone to death is one of the things that he's actually the only guy able to do that. That was a scientist.
That's awesome. I never even came to that conclusion, but yeah, that's one of those stats that you see where it's like nobody has ever had a 70% completion rating with 6 touchdowns and over 347 passing yards. It's like, okay, so you just threw in that stat and had to put 347 to make him the only person that's ever done that. Like the last person that did it threw 346.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got to make it the only person to ever do it.
It's the only distinction.
Yeah, because scientists probably aren't killing people in their day-to-day.
I mean, he didn't do it himself, but he was definitely the one that sentenced them. He was like, oh, this guy was counterfeiting off of the set.
not to say that a death sentence makes sense, but every time you clip one of these coins, the way that these coins are worth is basically their weight for silver or gold. So if you're passing around a bunch of these 1 pounds that weigh zero point 0.8 pounds, it's devaluing the currency.
And it's kind of weird to think, like, why is the scientist being put in charge of the mint with counterfeiting and all that stuff? His attention to detail and then also his background in math would mean that he would be more likely to come up with ideas that would make it all like cohesive, or what am I trying to say here? Everything being the same.
Yeah. Uniform.
Everything being uniform. So he would develop a way to, because he was also kind of an engineer in ways, he would help develop ways in which they could mint these coins, in which to mint more of them, but to also make them more uniform as far as their weight. Some gold wasn't worth, this gold coin wasn't worth more than this gold coin because it was a little bit bigger. One thing he also started doing is he started stamping the ends or the rings. Yep. What am I trying to say? The outside of the coin.
The ridges.
To where it would have the ridges. So then you would know if it got clipped, it would be smooth. If it had ridges, it was legitimate tender.
Pretty smart.
Yeah. We still use that today.
Yeah. And also one of the things that we got from his Serpico days was we have lists and not like audio recordings, but notes taken of
transcripts.
Yeah, transcripts of him basically getting these people to admit what they did and these confessions that he's getting out of people.
Isn't it an interrogation room? He's sitting there across the way. There's someone back behind a one-way mirror writing down all the notes. So, hey, listen, are you thirsty? You want some water? You can have some water after you answer a couple questions.
You got a scratchy throat? I got some turpentine solution back there. It'll clear you up. Don't even worry about it.
He just sat there and talked to him about calculus until they're like, fine, fuck, I did it. Just shut up.
There are a few guys that were put to death that we don't have any of these transcripts for. And the reason believed that we don't have any transcripts for them is because Newton was paying off witnesses. He knew that these guys were counterfeiters. He didn't have the evidence to prove that they were counterfeiters beyond he just knows.
You know what he has access to? Shit ton of money.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you can go ahead and pay a few guys to snitch on these fellas to get them put to death, you're taking that counterfeiter off. You're paying the small fish to turn on the big fish.
You might be taking a counterfeiter off, but yeah, maybe not.
It's very interesting that all of these biggest counterfeiters that he went after seem to not have any transcripts of any of the goings on in the
man
investigation.
That took such meticulous notes about stuff.
Yeah, almost a guy that maybe doesn't know the line that he's crossed in doing this. He would end up becoming the head or the
president.
No, what just happened? He would go from the warden of the Royal Mint in 1696. He would come after 2 years to become the head of the Royal Society and the head of the Mint, I believe, or does that come later? Oh, I am blanking.
Regardless, he's with the Mint. He's in a position of power. He can make decisions.
Oh, yeah, okay. So as the head of the Mint, it drops him below the warden position, so it's a lower rank. But being the head of the Mint means that you actually get like a certain percentage of the money that's being held.
Oh shit!
So it makes you like exorbitantly rich. Also, as the head of the Mint, do you remember the Peter the Great episode when he went on his grand bazaar?
Yeah.
And when he stopped in England, one of the things that he requested was to be able to go meet Newton.
Oh shit!
Yep,
that's right. To see about being able to go ahead and create a uniform currency for Russia.
Yeah, so our old buddy Peter the Great made a stop in England. One of the things he did, besides tearing down the hedges and wiping their asses with the curtains, was going to meet Isaac Newton at the Mint.
You don't like party.
But he actually really kind of stabilized. It didn't fix all of England's financial problems, but he helped produce this uniform currency that would curb counterfeiting.
Yeah.
And then he also put a lot of counterfeiters to death, which I'm sure probably scared a few of them off.
A lot of suspected counterfeiters to death.
1699, there would be this war of words between Newton and, I forgot to write down his first couple names. He's a German mathematician. His name is Leibniz, over the invention of calculus. Leibniz, we'll talk about kind of who comes out in the fold here. There had been communications between Newton and Leibniz back and forth kind of about these theories of calculus and ways to go about it. They did have different ways of going about it. Leibniz does have a claim for calculus as well.
It was one of those rare circumstances where they were actually developing it at the same time, just in different sections. And what they were communicating back and forth wasn't really shown to prove either side didn't pull from the other one and vice versa.
Yeah, and it kind of comes down, we'll talk about how this all shakes out, but it's more of a timing thing. And in that grand timing that we talk about that always shows up in his favor, 1703, that exact same year that Hooke dies, he's made president of the Royal Society.
This is how you know this guy's a petty bitch. One of the first things he does as president of the Royal Society, now that Hooke isn't there to do anything about it, is he has all of Hooke's shit, like his papers and all of his writings, taken out of the Royal Society. I can't pronounce this word. Royal Society. Does he also have his paintings removed?
Yep. And some of them were burned.
Yeah.
So yeah, petty feels like the right word to use, right?
He just walks in and he's like, you know what? This place is getting dirty. It's time for some spring cleaning. And he just has someone follow him around with a trash bin. He just walks, we're getting rid of this and this. This seems to just all be Hooke's work. He's like, is it? Oh, I didn't even notice. Well, you know what? We need to make room for more members' pictures and everything like that. So let's take this one down. That's also Hooke's portrait. Is it?
Shit. I forgot what he looked like.
Yeah.
Oh, tell the guy that's doing the Costco run this month, don't worry about buying toilet paper. We'll just shred these paintings up and use them to wipe our asses with Hooke's face, too. Or, Hooke. I think that's who you said that one was, right? All of them? Oh, weird.
Weirdly enough, it's not my fault that Hooke used such soft parchment that it is great for wiping your ass.
Yeah, petty, I believe, is the right word to use. But in moving into the Royal Society, he kind of comes in at a good time because before that, there were two presidents of the Royal Society that were kind of, one of them ends up becoming a duke. I think the other one ends up becoming a lord. They were more political stand-ins.
The focus for them wasn't on, it was about the position.
Yeah.
It wasn't essentially the work to be done. It probably stagnated a little bit.
Yeah, so their spending was out of control. He walks in, he balances the books. He does such a good job that they have enough, they're in the black enough that he's able to move the Royal Society to a completely new building. So they're making some money and everything's going well. There's a guy named John Flamsteed who is a member of the Royal Society who Newton might or might not have plagiarized a little bit of work from. I'm sure this probably runs into the whole Hooke thing again where he didn't write things down word for word, but he might have expounded upon somebody else's thinking and then claimed that it was his own. But again, he did take it further. Flamsteed's pissed. And Flamsteed's pretty mad because not only did Newton take some of it, he also published it before Flamsteed was ready for it to come out.
Yeah, it was in retaliation, which I completely see Flamsteed's point because here's the thing. Newton hated Hooke, obviously. But yet he's kind of doing the same shit or kind of having that same power trip, it seems like, that Hooke did. So this guy's like, hey, I think you did go ahead and plagiarize some of, my works I was doing. And he's like, oh, did I now? Well, why don't we just go ahead and release your works and see if I did plagiarize it? Guy wasn't ready for it or anything like that. It comes out, but it was just simply a fuck you, like, you're going to accuse me. I'm going to go ahead and release this, knowing it's probably not ready, so I can tear you apart, which in turns will make your point about me plagiarizing you completely lose its legitimacy.
Yeah, if you can't prove that I plagiarized you by finishing this work up first.
There's going to be so much stuff that's gets torn apart that it's going to call into question any of the other stuff that you're claiming.
Absolutely. So pettiness begets pettiness, apparently. He just keeps following it up. And after all that pettiness happens in 1705, he becomes Sir Isaac Newton as Queen Anne comes in and knights him during a royal visit to Cambridge. I believe they said that he was actually knighted for his work at the Mint in his time in Parliament when he spoke up once instead of
his contributions to science.
Yes. Yeah. Instead of all the other stuff that he did that he probably deserved it more for. They're like, you're a government worker and you were in Parliament. Doesn't matter what you did.
Here's your gold watch, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So from that point forth, he becomes Sir Isaac Newton. I believe they said that he was actually only the second philosopher / scientist to ever be knighted, and the first one was Francis Bacon. So he's in very rare air there, just like he was in very rare air being the second professor of mathematics.
And the first scientist to kill people.
Yeah, and the first scientist to kill people. He's putting up numbers like crazy. He's hanging banners left and right.
Setting records called Guinness.
1712. Newton sets the Royal Society with the task of proving who created calculus first. Now, I don't think I have to point out to you that there might be a conflict of interest, as Newton is the president of the Royal Society, and that's who they chose, or that's who he chose specifically.
Hold on. This is to put the debate between him and the dead man to rest, right?
Between him and Leibniz.
Oh, this is Leibniz. Okay.
Or Leibniz.
It ends up coming out to basically be just like, hey, and to the Royal Society's credit, they did come out and kind of be... Initially, listen, they did. They came out and they were talking about, hey, you guys were working on it concurrently at the same time. It then, you see Newton in the corner being like, points down at his name placard that says president. And they're like, but upon further review, it appears that Leibniz definitely plagiarized Newton.
Yeah, the ruling on the field stands.
The evidence was there that because they were separated, they came to conclusions separate from each other, and if they did have any help, there was enough on both sides to have it be a wash. But it's just simply the position at this point that takes precedence.
100%. Leibniz does eventually, hundreds of years later, get a little bit more respect as an independent body finally gets to take a look at this. And as they look at it, they come to I would say, a pretty fair conclusion.
Maybe that's what I was confusing it with, that it eventually got hashed out.
So the conclusion that is finally kind of the accepted conclusion is that Newton was the first one to actually create it. Leibniz was the first one to actually publish it. So Newton had started working on it previous to Leibniz starting to work on it. But the fact that Leibniz put his work up before Newton put his work up.
Got it to a point where it could be put up.
Yeah. And they also kind of came about it. They decided from sort of different directions. They were certainly influenced by each other, but the way that they went about how they got to the final answer was a little bit different. So kind of a wash, but of course,
no one knows Leibniz's name.
Yeah, Newton's fame makes it to where it's just Newton that created calculus by himself. Which, again, we've talked about this with so many different things about societies all over the world developing pretty similar things, pretty similar time frames, without having any knowledge of anybody else.
And then at the same time, different time frames. Iron Age is in different places. So it works concurrently sometimes it works hundreds of years apart. But societies will naturally find their way to certain things just from an evolutionary standpoint, it seems like.
And this was just one of the times when it completely synced up. Of course, Leibniz is not going to take this slight sitting down. 1715, they have a calculus off to where I don't think it was a Royal Society. I think it was some independent organization created this calculus problem or this theorem or whatever you got to do in calculus. And they released it to both Leibniz and Newton right around the same time. Leibniz ends up getting his response in first, but the question that they asked kind of needed to be answered in a more general term than like a very specific answer that's come up with. Newton goes straight for the specific answer. Leibniz is a little less confident, so he kind of gives a more broader general answer to cover things. Turns out Leibniz answered the question more satisfactory. He gets the W, and immediately Newton's like, fuck that guy. I'm going to try to ruin his life. I'm going to study for years. I'm going to produce a paper that's going to completely shatter his even reality on this planet.
He's going back to that kid on the schoolyard getting beat up by the bully.
Exactly.
But in his mind, he doesn't realize that he's the bully in this situation.
Yeah, and to Leibniz's credit, when Newton produces the paper to counter the question that was asked in the calculus,
it's not the answer; it's that the question was unfair or some shit like that.
Exactly. Leibniz is kind of like, all right, man, I got nothing else for you. I'm pretty much close to death. No need to respond.
I see which way the wind is blowing. Yeah.
Yeah, no matter what, I'm not gonna look right. I'm punching down at this point. In his 70s, Newton developed kidney stones, and this is just another instance of things that we look at now as something that wouldn't kill you being death sentences in a time when medical science just wasn't there. A lot of people have kidney stones now. I hear they're awful. I don't want to compare things between men and women, but I've heard that it's pretty much right up there with giving birth.
I hope I don't have to
Passing a
find out.
stone. Yeah, I don't want to
I
know.
don't wanna
So
find out.
I'm just going to go ahead and give women the win. If you're a kidney stone survivor, let us know.
Here's the thing too, and kind of going back, we forgot to mention it, but Newton at certain points in his life was known to have weird outbursts, I guess
Quirky.
you could say.
Yeah.
He would go into these essentially just not fits, but they considered them to have, two major mental breakdowns during his life. One of the breakdowns involved him writing a letter to Hook and then writing a letter to, I'm trying to remember who else. I can't remember though. The letter to Hook basically was like, I want you to die. Just completely out of left field, like some real hateful shit and everything. And part of it is kind of attributed to these breakdowns and everything of probably working with some mercury.
Yeah.
And so I think that probably for the fact that he also did continue on the side to go ahead and kind of work with alchemy and all these other studies, he probably was prone to having a little bit of the crazies every now and then. Or long-term exposure over that had just made his natural state maybe easy to set off or just prone to more, sudden outbursts.
Well, he was just a quirky dude. There would be times that they said where he was at Cambridge and somebody would tell him that he had to eat. It would have been 2 days since he had had his last meal because all he did was study and sleep. And so he would be...
You think he's going to be having sex?
Yeah, definitely not. There was no time for that. He would walk down to the mess hall and just be so deep in thought that he would walk past the mess hall and go down till he finally realized where he was. And then he would just forget to go to the mess hall and walk back to his room and go back to working. Like, he wasn't eating a whole lot. His sleep, one of his assistants that had been with him for a very long time said that I think his name was also Newton. His last name was Newton too, but they weren't related. He said that he had never seen Isaac Newton sleep in the daytime. Like, he'd never seen him take a nap. And he never, he would only sleep when it was dark outside. So
didn't he write a letter back and he's like, this dude has me in the fucking lab doing all this crazy shit. I'm probably not allowed to talk about it because this alchemy stuff is illegal, but he's got me working with chemicals. I'm getting burned.
Yeah, he's just a crazy dude.
Like mad scientist type shit.
There's a story that, and again, some of the stuff, this is where I think emotionally, or his intelligence was certainly there as far as his image. There were stories about him walking into town holding the bridle of a horse and reading a book, and by the time he got to town, he looked over and the horse had slipped the bridle and run away, and he just didn't know. I think it's a weird story, but it's something that they kind of tell.
An analogy for how hyper focused he could be or how much his head was in the books.
So I'm sure that the man didn't take real great care of himself. And again, we're back to drinking kerosene or drinking turpentine, and then holding a lot of mercury and other heavy metals. Lead poisoning is also a thing too. He was working a lot with lead. That he probably developed kidney stones through just a lifestyle of poor choices.
I was going to say, as far as things to catch from probably mercury and all that other stuff, kidney stones is probably on the lighter side. Also, it explains the fact, he develops them later in life, but at the same time, if he doesn't take care of himself or anything like that, he's probably not drinking a ton of water. Isn't that one of the things that kind of leads to kidney stones?
Yeah.
You get too much of it's a calcium buildup, right?
Yep. And it seems like there's a lot of things that take people down. I believe Hook died of gout. And I know that Newton also...
The rich man's disease.
Yep. Newton also had a little fight with gout too. But these kidney stones just basically slowed his life down. His schedule would slow down. He started showing up less and less around Cambridge and around the Royal Society. I think he was still like a professor in absentia at Cambridge at this point in time, which I'm sure being a Royal Society member only makes Cambridge look better.
Yeah, so he's like, up until the point of his death, he maintains being a professor. He was the head of the Royal Society or the president of the Royal Society up until his death. Wasn't he also like the
Master of the Mint still?
Master of the Mint. He got made the Master of the Mint. He went from they were just like, fuck it, make him the Master. He's the Master of the Mint up until the point that he dies. So he's got all these spinning plates.
And he's just doing them less and less because he's leaving the house less and less.
He can't piss.
Yeah. Yeah, and these stones are breaking off and moving down into his urethra and just causing
And he's drinking more mercury and turpentine, trying to fight the kidney stones.
trying to counteract it. Yeah, I wonder if he ever tried to inject himself with something just to go straight to the point. But then again,
He's a scientist, man.
yeah, I guess we had a little understanding of the body. But this man who basically kickstarted the scientific revolution that led into kind of this Enlightenment period inside England is finally succumbing to just Father Time. Like, Father Time was the only rule that he hadn't quite figured out yet. And he still kept going. I believe it was the last time that he attended a Royal Society meeting. After he was leaving, he started to get real, real bad. He slipped into a coma, and I believe he was in a coma for like a week. Woke up, doing a little bit better, but still pretty much bedridden, and ends up dying. They knew that the end was near because he also received, or he was going to receive last rites. He's just like,
It's usually not a good sign.
Not necessary. I don't need these. This is something that you guys created. God didn't say this, so we're good to go. Apparently, he confessed to somebody at that point in time that he was going to die a virgin. I don't know.
He popped enough scientific cherries that...
Yeah, I don't know which one of the virginities he was talking about keeping. But
I mean, do we get an Isaac Newton if he discovers
women,
the joys of intercourse?
the flesh? Yeah, no. He seems like he would be a working woman.
How many men's potential and genius has been ruined by the treasure between a woman's legs?
Yep. Yeah, he was more of a John than a boyfriend or a husband, I think. That might have been more of his lot in life. But he does end up passing away in London.
If he starts having sex, do we get the space program?
Oh.
I mean, someone would have...
Probably not yet.
Yeah.
It would have taken us a little bit longer, but 2050, we probably could have made it to the moon.
He took the hit for us all.
He did.
Yeah.
Proud of him for that. So dying in London, he died on March 20th, 1727. If he died anywhere else in Europe, he would have died March 31st, 1727. Pretty big deal, though, because he is given a ceremonial funeral and he is buried at Westminster Abbey among the kings and queens, among the royalty of England.
If you told that to somebody and you're like, he died on March 20th and he died on March 31st, they're like, he fucking resurrected?
It's a Jesus situation?
Yeah. He cracked the code.
He figured it out. Yeah, he did enough that they buried him with the kings and queens. He got knighted for his work at the mint and parliament, and they buried him because of his scientific endeavors.
He's also buried in like the section of Westminster Abbey where the people that are also known for science and that contributed are buried as well. But yeah, he was basically given what you would consider a state funeral that's usually reserved for royalty or, people of high standing. And I mean, I think he has a statue. I think other guys have like a placard on the floor or something like that, but he has a bust in like a big statue, right?
You want to know how they got that statue so accurate?
Oh, yeah. Don't they do a death mask?
They plaster casted his dead ass face.
They got to do it while the body's still warm is what they said.
And then they pulled the mold off and they poured it. That's how we have such a scary, accurate statue of Isaac Newton's face.
He was an intense looking dude, but he was actually a decent looking dude.
Yeah, besides the hair.
Yeah.
He had a few questionable hairstyles. I wouldn't have done it, but same time I didn't play with Mercury. So
that's true.
Kind of different. He did have a Jerry curl phase that was pretty cool. I will give him
You got to respect that.
Yeah.
A silver or white Jerry curl.
Yeah.
But the dude was, I mean, he was also into some kind of farther out there theories. That's the thing. He wasn't like he didn't discount stuff in almost weird ways. Like he was interested in Atlantis.
Yep. Oddly enough.
There was a quote that he was working during some of his alchemy studies. He had a notation that he needed the menstrual blood of a sordid whore for experiments regarding the Philosopher's Stone.
He wasn't going to get himself, though. He wasn't going to go out and follow the
Well,
the
and
lady
that
the
and
night
then that
around.
makes you believe, like, did he try like all kinds of other menstrual blood? But he eventually discovered he's like, I haven't got a whore's blood yet. So I need one of those to try to actually cross this off the list of things that would be useful in creating the Philosopher's Stone.
Bring me a pregnant lady's urine.
He came up with some theories that he believed the world was going to end in 2060, which honestly, he was right about a lot of shit. So I'm kind of curious because he didn't really go into detail with how it was going to end. So I'm wondering if it's some type of like astrological shit he was able to calculate. So we only got, 35 years before we find that out?
Yeah.
He ends up publishing 3 books. The Principia, which he had several volumes of, but they can kind of consider it
3
because
volumes.
it just added Optics, and then another one called De Motu, which I don't know what that one was about.
He also had, I believe they said it was almost half of his work that he had written, published post-mortem.
Yeah.
So up to his dying day, the published material was only about half, which is interesting because like you always hear about singers or musicians that die and they have this catalog, and then there's people that are throwing albums together.
Yeah.
You think he would come back and he would look at everything that's published like, damn, guys, you couldn't have tidied this up a little bit?
Well, it was the like opposite of Hook. So Hook, he was waiting for him to die so he could get rid of all of his shit. Everyone was just waiting for Newton to die so they could just publish and release his shit.
He did burn a fair amount of his stuff, probably because there was some alchemy stuff in there and a few other things he didn't want to see. He was erasing his search history, basically.
Yeah, what would they have done if they discovered all of his alchemy shit? I mean, they eventually did because there was a portion of it, but at the same time, I wonder if his studies in alchemy kind of like helped it transition into a more legitimate like chemistry type field of study and kind of lead it away from that weird witchcrafty type heretic type, stigma it had on it.
He also got the taking of the holy rites banned from professorship.
Ooh.
Because I believe he went to, it might have been William the Orange, and basically laid out why you shouldn't have to do this.
I like that he went after that, but probably didn't go after the celibacy aspect of
Yeah,
it.
definitely not.
He's like, listen, I led a pretty good life and I didn't have to have sex. You guys don't have to have sex either. Mm-hmm. The good news is you don't have to recognize all 3 of the spirits anymore. This is one of those, and I don't know if we've made it clear during this episode, during our incessant ramblings about these theories and everything, but even if this stuff didn't exist now and someone proposed this, people would still be like, how did you figure this stuff out? Like, how did your mind even attempt to go here? But the simple fact that this happened 350 years ago, that's what the most kind of crazy thing to wrap your head around is. Just there was this guy who just saw that there was this problem that needed to be solved, didn't know how to solve it. And so instead of just being like, well, I didn't solve it in this way, I guess that's it. He was just like, oh no, I'm just going to go around and try to solve it in every way I possibly can.
Well, he's a stepping stone for Einstein.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's the Descartes, Aristotle, but more accurate that Einstein was able to continue building, the theory of relativity?
Yeah, and that's just the stuff we know about.
Mm-hmm.
Einstein, and the reason we know so much about that is because Newton is so intrinsically tied to physics that anyone else studying physics would, of course, have to have continued his work.
Yeah.
That's not to say engineering didn't. There's a few things that like I wrote just to kind of give you an idea, and this is a very, very small portion of things that he influenced. Back in World War II, when they were decoding the Enigma system, there was another system called the Tunny system. Instead of just being like the general infantry code that they would be sending out like the Enigma, the Tunny system was Hitler's like high command messages. And there was a guy that they got that had previously worked in like puzzles and things like that had used some of like the calculus that Newton had used to try to, and actually decrypted a lot of this stuff by finding patterns and things of that nature. The space program is completely tied to Newton. Engineering, if you see a skyscraper, if you see bridges, if you're riding in a car and you feel the suspension, all of that stuff is based upon studies that Newton did. Computer sciences are completely based on calculus, the ones and the zeros. All of that exists because of Newton. And then our understanding of optics, glasses, understanding of colors, a lot of that is also based on Newton's studies. So this guy has for a guy that didn't have sex, he's got his dick deep in so many different facets of just everyday life.
Yeah, it's tough because we still have so long to do this podcast and so many more people, but he might be the smartest guy we ever do.
So far, yeah, definitely.
I'd have a tough time probably until we do Einstein, maybe, somebody like that, but he's just a brilliant man all the way around.
Oh, I have a headache.
Yeah, this was such a fun episode. I hope that it came across better than I thought it was going to go, if I'm being honest. I'm not 100% psyched about some of the explanations and hope we don't get called out immediately. But if we do, I'm fine with it because I need to learn this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I want somebody to explain it better to where I can explain it better.
I have zero problem with being corrected during this episode. And I understand it's going to happen a lot. Just remember, we're smoking and we're not physicists. So that's what I'll leave you with.
We did this in a week.
That's true. All right, you got anything else?
Nope, I think we're good.
All right, well, thanks for joining us on this episode. We'll catch you next week, everyone.
Peace.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for another episode. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe and like button. Follow us. If you didn't like what you heard, still hit that anyway, because we'll probably cover something in the future that you do like. Please follow us on our social media. Adam, hit them with it.
Our Instagram is historically high pod, historically high pod. And we are on Twitter at historically high. That's historically HI.
All right. And if you guys want to send in any feedback, suggestions, hit us up on those two, or you can even do it on Gmail. It's historicallyhighpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again.
Peace.